Prepare for a new, despair-inducing world with a vast, fully explorable horizon and vertically oriented landforms. Prepare for a new, mysterious story centered around the world of Lodran. But most of all, prepare to die. You will face countless murderous traps, countless darkly grotesque mobs, and several gargantuan, supremely powerful demons and dragon bosses. You must learn from death to persist through this unforgiving world. And you aren't alone. Dark Souls allows the spirits of other players to show up in your world, so you can learn from their deaths and they can learn from yours. You can also summon players into your world to co-op adventure, or invade others' worlds to PvP battle. New to Dark Souls are Bonfires, which serve as checkpoints as you fight your way through this epic adventure. While rested at Bonfires, your health and magic replenish, but at a cost. All mobs respawn. Beware, there is no place in Dark Souls that is truly safe. With days of gameplay and an even more punishing difficulty level, Dark Souls will be the most deeply challenging game you play this year. Can you live through 1,000,000 deaths and earn your legacy? Hello and welcome back to the neighborhood, and welcome to the first episode of Dark Souls Month. We're trying something new this month. For the first 3 weeks of April, we will be releasing episodes on Dark Souls, Dark Souls 2, and Dark Souls 3. After that, we'll be doing an episode where we rank all of the FromSoft games and discuss those rankings. And the final episode of April, because we chose to do this in a month with 5 Mondays, will be a community discussion of Souls-like games. So now, let's kick it all off with the original Dark Souls.
Dark Souls is a dark fantasy action role-playing game series developed by From Software and published by Bandai Namco Entertainment. It began with the release of Dark Souls in 2011 and has seen 2 sequels, Dark Souls 2 in 2014 and Dark Souls 3 in 2016. The series was created by Hidetaka Miyazaki and has received critical acclaim, with its high level of difficulty being among its most discussed aspects. And the first Dark Souls is often cited as one of the greatest games of all time. By 2023, the series has shipped over 35 million copies outside of Japan. Other From Software games, including Demon's Souls, Bloodborne, and Elden Ring, share several related concepts and led to the creation of the Souls-like subgenre.
For this series, we'll be tackling these games as if we were playing through them, taking the conversation one area or level at a time, and then discussing the boss at the end. This will allow us to cover the whole game while also keeping the conversation somewhat structured.
Yeah, so if you don't want spoilers, the whole time is spoilers.
Yeah.
But really, it's, I guess, spoilers mostly for like us talking about what the zone looks like and the boss in it. Like, story-wise, you're not going to get that just by playing the game. You're going to have to go watch some videos for
I was going to say, this will not be a deep lore deep dive because I have not really... I've watched some Dark Souls lore videos, but it's the murkiest still to me. If you like, when we talk about Sekiro and Elden Ring and Bloodborne, I feel like I have a much firmer grasp on the lore of those games, whereas the Dark Souls trilogy is still kind of the most convoluted to me. So this is going to be more like our experiences with the game, what we like, what we don't like, what we think has aged well, what hasn't, like that kind of a conversation. We will touch on characters. We may touch on story and things like that, because there are bits and pieces going through these games again that I thought was interesting, and I do kind of want to go back and check out some of Vati's older videos. I've watched some of them, but I'd like to go back and rewatch some now, having kind of gone through a couple of these games again. But yes, we're going to be spewing our thoughts freely in this series. So it's always a weird thing with FromSoft games. Like, kind of, if you care about spoilers, you've probably played the game and beat it and appreciate the story and lore.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you probably aren't going to play it anyways. So you could just listen to the episodes. So
yeah.
It's an interesting kind of one-off in the games industry as far as like spoilers and lore. People take spoilers for these more as like side bosses or optional bosses and secrets that you can find and stuff versus like who the big bad guy was at the end.
Exactly.
So I started making a list of all of the zones and the bosses that were related to them, and that got really tedious, especially with Dark Souls 1, where you can kind of approach, because Fextra Life has been kind of my go-to for a lot of information on replaying these games, but their kind of like pathway guide that they have is split into like 3 trees based on your familiarity with Souls games and stuff. And it's just like, I just need somebody to give me a list that breaks down like the zones in order that I can pull from. And so we found a couple sites that we're going to be kind of using to guide us through this. So hopefully we'll cover everything. We should definitely cover the majority of the game.
Yeah.
There's a slight possibility maybe we'll miss a zone or a boss or something, but I think we'll do pretty good here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we've, between the two of us, we've got IGN and Simple Gamer guides up. And so between those two guides and just our own memories, hopefully we will cover everything. But if we don't, join our Discord and tell us that. Tell us what we missed.
Yes, for sure. I'm going to create a Souls month, or I don't know how I'll structure it quite yet, but there will be like a specific channel definitely for the community episode coming up.
Yeah.
But maybe it'll also be for like conversations around these episodes. But kicking things off, your journey begins
with a cutscene that makes total sense.
Yes. You get the opening cinematic. All FromSoft games have their pretty like epic cinematic. Even if nothing is really happening visually, it's like whoever's narrating it is very into it, and you're like, oh, I'm about to go on a really cool adventure.
Yeah, it definitely gives like opening of Fellowship of the Ring vibes, where it's Galadriel telling you like all of these things, and boom, here's this big epic like cutscene or whatever. They're throwing around a lot of terms, and
a lot of names.
A lot of names that, it kind of hits the ground running. It's like the memes where you're reading a fantasy book and it's just like, and just like, I don't understand what these are. And like a lot of games would fill that in for you.
Yeah, as you play, you start to piece things together, and
you can do that with Dark Souls. Don't get me wrong. But that is like its own game for a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly.
Collecting all of the items, writing down all of the item descriptions so that you can search them, so that you can piece the story together. Because a lot of, essentially, with these games, and I think this is something that all 3 of them kind of hold, is most of the story has happened already, and you are just kind of showing up after the fact and piecing together kind of what has happened.
I feel like that's true for
pretty much
all FromSoft games, all of their like Souls games, even Sekiro being kind of the outlier in that list. It's like you still are coming back after stuff has hit the fan, and you're kind of piecing together what happened. Yeah.
And so I think that is kind of exemplified in how you start the game, which is in a jail cell. Some random person throws you a key.
Yeah.
And is like, hey, get out of here.
Yeah. Do they ever explain who that is? Do we know who that is? Is that a character we care about?
I know I've watched a Vati explanation. I don't remember if it was like cut content or not, though. I think like what I'm remembering is that guy was like on the path to be the what do they call him in this game? I want to say...
The Elden Lord.
Yeah, I want to say like tarnished Elden Lord, because I've been playing a lot of Elden Ring recently.
Yeah, there's like the unkindled.
Yeah, the
3
chosen undead, is that?
Yeah, there's the undead and the hollowed.
The hollowed. That's
1.
what it is.
Yeah.
Hollowed. So yeah, I think it was the original one that was on the quest to defeat Gwyn. And then...
So it's not the guy that is like dying in the cell as you like progress.
No, that's him. Yeah.
Oh, that's the guy who hands you the key?
I think so.
Okay, that makes sense.
If I remember watching Vati's video correctly.
That's what I was trying to remember, is if like you find that guy later, and that makes sense. So yeah.
Yeah. So you wake up in the cell.
In an asylum.
You wander out. There are messages on the ground, which is how they communicate the tutorial for you. Easily missable. Very basic messages. But, you know, it tells you how to lock on. It tells you how to backstab. It tells you how to block, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Still do that to this day. They did that in Elden Ring.
Yeah.
Elden Ring also had like pop-up windows and stuff that would give you information. Bloodborne, you don't get those messages until you reach the Hunter's Dream. Yeah. And then you have to like take the loop to the side and like seek them out. It is kind of nice that in the Dark Souls games, they seem to at least put those messages front and center when you start the game.
Yeah, I was going to say, at least with Dark Souls 1, it's like just the beginning. Like you
I think
have
2
to
is like
walk
that as
past
well.
them.
Yeah.
Like Elden Ring, I know that they have like you have to drop down into a cave.
And now they have a pop-up for that too on my replay. It's like, hey, if you want to check out the tutorial, drop down this hole, because too many people are whining about that. Whereas in Sekiro, under Activision's control, there's like a pop-up every 30 seconds in the first like couple hours of that game telling you like,
here's how
this does this, and this does this, and this is this mechanic, and this is how this works.
Yep. It was still the hardest.
Yeah, it doesn't make it easier to like accomplish.
Yeah.
Like replaying that game and knowing how to play it, and then you're halted every time you come up on a new enemy or a new mechanic, and it stops and throws the pop-up. It's like, oh my gosh, this is a little heavy-handed. I'm glad they didn't do this for every game.
Yeah.
But yes, the Asylum, level I've played the most.
Yeah.
In Dark Souls, obviously.
Yeah, definitely.
It's where you start.
Yeah, and Dark Souls, at least in my mind, is one of those types of games where like you start it way more than you finish it.
Yes.
Like there are definitely way more characters that I have created and gotten some percentage of the way through than characters that I have like taken completely to the end game. But most of the early Asylum is pretty chill, pretty docile. Like you don't really have, like, I think there's a couple of actually hostile enemies that notice you.
Yeah, you fight a few hollows after you run past the demon.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was you kind of wander into this big room and then it throws this massive boss at you.
Yeah, and you have a broken sword or no sword at that point.
You have a broken sword at that point, which if you were really, really good at the game, you could definitely beat.
If you're patient.
Yeah, and patient.
Because something about Dark Souls 1 I've noticed is that a lot of the bosses are, like, going back to this game, a lot of the bosses are pretty simple.
Yeah.
That's not really where the difficulty is in Dark Souls 1, with the exception of definitely one.
Yeah.
We'll talk about. I think there's 2 bosses that I had to do multiple times. And then there was one that I like super cheesed with a guide because the boss run to it is ridiculous, and it's just
annoying.
It's just an annoying gimmick fight.
Yeah. So definitely can beat it, but the correct way is like a door
you
is
run
open,
past
you
it.
run past it. And then it shows you, that's part of the tutorial. It shows you how to like drop down and kill it, or drop down and do like a big chunk of health damage to it. I think you also get like an actual sword.
After you run past it, you get your sword, like you get whatever your class started with. So like your sword, your axe, your shield, whatever. And then that's when the hollows start attacking you. There's one shooting at you from the end of the hallway. Then you go up the steps. There's a couple like archers. if you pass where you can drop down on the demon to trigger the boss fight, there's like a slightly harder hollow that's supposed to teach you how to parry.
Yep.
Parrying in Dark Souls 1, not bad. I mean, it's not, I would say for this month, for this content we've planned, I went back and I beat Dark Souls 1 for the first time. And then I replayed Dark Souls 3 solo because you and I did most of that game co-op. So I wanted to go through and like kind of experience it at my pace. And I would say, and then I started a new character in Dark Souls 2. I'm not very far in that game. And I would say that the parry definitely feels different in every single game.
Yes.
I would say 3 is the hardest. 1, it wasn't bad. I just didn't utilize it because I went strength, and by like at a certain point, I could just tank stuff.
Yeah. 1, like going back and playing some of these again, I've probably put the most time into Dark Souls 2. Yeah. Which I think that one for me personally has like the janky, like that one to me always feels like it's got a weird delay on like
everything kind of has a weird delay. Yeah.
And so if I've been playing other stuff recently, like the other Dark Souls games, I feel like I'm always off with that parry.
Mm-hmm.
That said, going back to Dark Souls 1, I'm like, man, I can hit this parry every time almost. Like, which is a nice feeling because I used to never get it at all.
Which FromSoft game has the best parry?
For me, Elden Ring.
Really?
Well, realistically, Bloodborne, but Bloodborne's kind of like a weird
Bloodborne
parry.
has the best parry.
Like, you're not really parrying, you're just shooting it.
No, but it's still the same idea of like shoot right before the attack hits. Whereas, which I guess maybe because that was my first game, that makes the most sense to me, like mentally. Whereas the like shield parry,
like
maybe
you have
it's
to be early on.
Yeah, because the bullet, like when you shoot in Bloodborne, it's like
it's
at
almost
that
instant.
moment. Yeah. Whereas in the Dark Souls games, or in Elden Ring, like your arm has to swing. Which I will say, I rolled a character in Elden Ring that started with like a buckler.
Yeah,
and the parry in Elden Ring feels pretty good.
Yeah, the parry in Elden Ring feels very good.
They honed it in. Mm. They honed it in across the board for Elden Ring. We'll get there, but yeah. So then yes, like you mentioned in the Asylum, there's a message that tells you, hey, if you like press the attack button as you're falling, you're going to do a plunging attack.
Yeah,
and it teaches you that mechanic, and you can take out a good chunk of the Asylum demon's health. He's the boss for this area, this tutorial area. Pretty straightforward. He'll swing, he'll jump, or he'll float in the air and butt slam down. You can basically like hug his legs and whack him, and then when he floats away, you roll away.
Yeah,
pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's he has like 2 or 3 different moves.
Yeah,
and so it kind of goes with what you were saying of like a lot of the Dark Souls 1 bosses. Their like move set definitely feels less extensive than some of the old, newer games, I guess. Which is not a bad thing. I mean, I think it originally, when did I say it came out? Like 2009, 2008.
Yeah, I think it was
2011 is what I have here. But
11. Yeah, I think it came out. It came out the same year as Skyrim.
Yeah,
and then remastered came later.
Yeah, but yeah, so it's definitely an older game. Like now in this day and age, where it spawned kind of like a whole subgenre almost. I know purists will tell me that Demon Souls did it, but whatever. I guess we have this expectation of like more complicated bosses and learning those movesets because a lot of the people that are really into this genre have come through a lot of it and have gotten progressively like better at recognizing boss patterns.
Well, something interesting about Dark Souls 1 is that for me, going back and replaying it, the boss almost felt like my reward for getting through the BS that was the level. And I feel like that pendulum has swung the other direction with FromSoft as the levels are a lot more fun to explore. And yeah, you could still end up in a bad situation or come across like that one tough enemy or that one trap that they put there and die and then have to kind of start over. But when you get to the boss, it becomes a exercise of learning, adapting, figuring out what's the right strategy, what do I
Yeah.
need to do, what is it weak to, what are my windows to dodge, what are my windows to attack.
Yeah.
Like, they've gotten much more ambitious with their bosses. And in the older FromSoft games, I remember this with Dark Souls 2 as well, it was like a lot of the bosses you can pretty much get on your first try. Like, there's nothing, just because they're simpler and you've played games like this before, or you've, whatever. If you can get through the level, typically the boss isn't going to be that bad. There are a few situations where the boss arena is tiny and it's easy to get cornered, or you're on a bridge and you can get thrown off and stuff like that. That kind of sucks. But for the most part, I feel like the bosses in 1 and 2 especially.
Yeah.
But there were even a few in 3 where it was like the boss felt like the reward for getting through the level, as opposed to the boss was the challenge and the level was more just about exploration.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot more of the almost video game literacy, I feel like, that we have at this point, where it's like, I am familiar enough with these games that, like, I get how to...
Yeah,
like,
that's definitely part of it, too.
Yeah, like something that was newer back when, like, Dark Souls 1 and 2 were out. It's like, yeah, I've seen this kind of thing from so many bosses, or even just regular enemies at this point, that it's so much easier to, like, handle when it's a boss. And, too, I think there's something to be said for, like, going through playing some of these games right at launch versus, like, years down the road, where I don't want to say everything has been optimized, but, like, you're not having to, like, guess and figure out quite as much,
Yeah.
Like, we both played Elden Ring right when it came out. And so we both very quickly hit a point where, like, the people who were writing guides for that game didn't really have them for the point of the game we were at anymore. And the, Dark Souls 1, especially like 2011, when online guides were not what they are today, going through now, there's a little bit more of like a streamlined process that
sure
you can use, which helps a lot, I think.
And like all of FromSoft's games are about like trial and error and exploration and figuring things out, but Dark Souls 1 is the most of that.
Yeah.
And we'll get into it as we talk about the game, but like I think that's why this game is so unforgivingly hard, is that I don't know that they did that very well in certain areas. Some of, like, a lot of what they did was extremely impressive for the time.
Yeah.
The way they like laid out the world, the way everything connects, some of the smart decisions that they make with like mechanics and enemies and certain things. And then some of it is just like arbitrarily hard, because like, how are you supposed to figure this out without somebody telling you, or without spending hundreds of hours in this game, or looking up a guide? Like, some of the mechanics, some of the systems, even just like if you boot up Dark Souls and you don't know anything about it, you don't know that you're a hollowed. You don't understand what humanity is. You don't know why you're like, what kindling is.
Yeah.
Like, there are just so many like layers and systems and things, and the interface isn't super friendly, and they don't really explain like the stats or the, like encumbrance. And there's just, it's such a dense game with its systems, and nothing is explained. And then then on top of just like the game systems of like just, armor and weight and weapons and skills and whatever, then they tack on things like curse. And it's like, oh, if this one enemy breathes on you for too long, you're going to turn into this crystal guy. And then when you come back, you're going to be stuck at half health. Unless you have this one particular item.
And unless you talk to this one particular person.
Yeah, that'll fix it. But we're not going to tell you that.
Yeah.
And then, you go to, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but you go to certain areas and it's like, you can't actually hurt these enemies unless you've used this item or have this type of weapon. But we're not going to tell you that.
Yeah. And like, as somebody who really enjoys exploration in games, on the one hand, I really love that about this game because it is very much like it keeps that sort of discovery alive that, we talked a little bit about Sekiro earlier, where so many games are like tripping over themselves to like throw something in your face that's like, hey, did you know that if you hit this enemy with this type of a weapon that,
Right.
But on the other hand, it can be super frustrating and annoying to get into because it is a very dense game and it doesn't explain a lot. And that's part of the art of it, I guess. But there's also just a lot where I'm like, yeah, it kind of feels like maybe you're just being like obtuse for the sake of being obtuse here. Like It doesn't feel like I don't feel like if they had something in the world somewhere that said, hey, this weapon hurts ghosts, or this type of thing hurts ghosts, I personally don't feel like that would make the game less good.
Yeah, and it's something I feel like they've adapted to and learned because I think Elden Ring has done such a great job of balancing that like sense of exploration and stakes and danger and also, trial and error and things like that, but has made it so much more approachable and fair feeling. Because like Dark Souls 1, it's just obtuse for obtuse sake is a good way to put it. But and it also some of the zones and like level design feels intentionally just like we're going to screw you as many times as possible.
Yeah.
And the problem is that every time that happens, there's high stakes because enemies reset. Your progress is essentially reset. And also you lose the currency you need to get stronger. And so it feels really bad when you're going through some level and then all of a sudden there's just this like elevator that decides to kill you for no reason. And it's like, cool. And I have to make it all the way back here to get these souls, hopefully not die, and then keep going. But at least I learned that elevator will kill me. So yeah, there's definitely, I feel like Demon Souls 2 to a certain extent, but like Dark Souls was such a great blueprint. And I think FromSoft has done an excellent job of like growing from there and improving. Like if they were still making Dark Souls today, I don't think they would be nearly as beloved as they are. But because they've learned all these lessons throughout the year of like how to make it a better game as far as quality, as far as quality of life, as far as approachability, but still maintain that like difficulty and overcoming challenges and exploring and trial and error. They've done a really good job with that. Like,
well, and I feel like that is what this game does so well 85% of the time is like, and all of these games really, but this one too, of it does a very good job of feeling usually decently fair when you're going through things. It's like, yes, like I know how, like occasionally you'll, run into, get killed by some enemies or whatever. But most of the time you're learning from that and you are figuring out ways of like, if I'm not just barreling through the level, like I can fight these enemies in like groups of one or two. And like I understand how these enemies work and, that sort of a thing. Like, and then 15% of the time is where you just get into some like just bullshit where it's like, this doesn't feel fair anymore. Like I'm dying here and it does like that there's, we'll talk about it a little bit, but Sen's Fortress is full of just like, haha, gotcha.
Exactly.
And it feels bad because it doesn't feel fair. And I do think that, like you were saying, From Software, as they have continued to develop games, has gotten a lot better at making it feel like twisting that to like keep it feeling fair for the majority of the time, you know?
Right.
In Elden Ring, there are very few times when I die where I'm just like, that was bullshit. That doesn't feel fair. Like 99% of the time, it's like, yep, nope, I know exactly how I messed up there and I deserve that. And the other, you know, like 1% of the time is Melania's stupid bloodfowl, whatever, waterfowl dance.
Waterfowl dance, yeah. Cool. Well, this is going to be a real short episode because
we're still in the first zone.
We did the tutorial. Yeah. So from there, you go to...
You get picked up by a giant crow.
So yeah, the crow takes you to the actual main area world of Dark Souls where you start. You get dropped off at the
Firelink Shrine.
Yes.
Which is cool. You know, like one of the things that people talk about with the new like Breath of the Wild and stuff is like, oh, you see it and then you go to it sort of thing. And like you could see a lot of the parts of Dark Souls that you eventually go to from Firelink.
Yeah, from Firelink you can go like 3 or 4 directions, and especially if you got the master key as your starting item.
Yeah.
You could technically like do the thing, but there are certain areas that you should go to.
Yeah.
And certain ones that are designed for later.
Yeah. So the ideal, well, I guess you come across like, you know, your first NPC as well.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, this sucks. Everyone is going to die. You know, here's a ring or whatever.
Firelink is really cool in the sense that it feels like at the center of the world.
Yeah.
But it's probably the worst hub.
Correct.
Like I didn't care about Firelink.
No.
Or feel like it was my home the way I felt about the Hunter's Dream or Majula or I guess
it was also Firelink Shrine 3, but it
3.
Was like a bigger, better one that had a lot more NPCs that have ended up there eventually.
Yeah, it felt more like the hubs they had built up to that point. Because in Dark Souls 1, everything is spread out. Like you have your blacksmith is way over here in this zone, and your other blacksmith is way over here in this zone, and your like vendor is over here, and this person is over, their vendor that sells this thing is over here, which is cool because again it like forces you to kind of explore and experience the interconnectivity of the world. But in later games it's like, oh, this is where I upgrade my stuff.
Yeah.
This is where I get stronger, I level up, I do the thing. This is my safe zone. They did a good job of making your future Firelinks feel like a kind of safe haven and a home, whereas Dark Souls 1, it kind of just felt like it was there. It was a place. Like I super kindled that bonfire, and you could talk to the fire maiden to level up your Estus flask, but she wasn't a character. I don't care about her at all. Yeah, so it was like, and there are some other NPCs and things going on, but
yeah, they kind of just wander through for the most part, though.
Yeah, and so much of it is so, again, scattered and obtuse that you don't really get a sense of community or home from Firelink.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like you said, I do think the best part about Firelink is how many options it gives you right off the bat.
Yeah.
Like you can go kind of up to like the main way that you progress, like the intended way, I guess. But then you can go like through the graveyard and, like run through and get a bunch of higher powered stuff if you know what you're doing early. If you took the master key, you can go down
to like the Valley of the Drakes and
stuff. And so that's just kind of like a cool, like here are a bunch of options, which is always, nice.
Yeah. But you're supposed to go towards the Undead Burg, which is kind of your starting area. Pretty straightforward. There's a few little looping pathways and like items that you can get if you explore and take some jumps and poke around.
Yeah, like you eventually run into like your first vendor who is, selling some stuff. You also learn that if you kill the vendor, you get a cool like katana. And then like you run into, like, as you're kind of wandering through, you run into, like, okay, here's a bonfire. Here's, it's kind of still a little bit of a tutorial. There's nothing on the ground saying like, this is what you do to do this, but it's laid out in a very much like still kind of a tutorial way. And eventually you wander through enough where you either run into a Black Knight, which are a recurring kind of enemy throughout the world.
Throughout the series.
Yeah. Or you get to the first boss, which is the Taurus demon.
Yeah. I fought that Black Knight with the hopes of getting a good weapon from it. And I did. I got the Black Knight sword.
Yeah.
I was hoping for the great sword.
Big strength sword.
Yeah. But I got the sword and I used the sword pretty much through to the end, I think.
Yeah.
At the very end, I leveled up the like man serpent great sword or something and was using that. But that sword carried me pretty far through the game.
Yeah, I was going to say that's another, point I guess to touch on is that I think this applies pretty much to any of the, From Software games, but you can pretty much play effectively with any weapon.
Yeah.
Obviously, people have crunched the numbers and it's like, this one is objectively the best, but usually we're talking about like the differences in, a few points of damage or something like that, or like move set preference or, like whatever. And so like realistically, if you had wanted to, you could have kept using that Black Knight sword throughout the entire game. It's more so just like, well, what do I want to use and what's best for my build? And like, you can use something that's suboptimal and not really feel that difference a whole lot,
Yeah, FromSoft likes to give you a billion options, but most of them are viable. I mean, there's people who beat the Dark Souls games with broken straight swords.
Yeah, I wouldn't, like some of them are obviously like, this is not a weapon intended to be used, but you can if you want to, but yeah. So when I first played Dark Souls, I fought the Taurus demon and he jumped. He like glitched or something and like was making a jumping attack towards me and jumped off of the edge of the
nice
like little bridge that you fight him on and died.
What a first like quote unquote real boss fight where they put you on a bridge, a super narrow bridge, and you have archers shooting at you from the top.
Yep.
Now the intended game design of this is, hey, those archers are telling you I could go up there and kill them. Which then means, hey, I'm up here. I could probably drop on this demon like I did before. So I understand what they're doing there, and that is what I did. And then, like, I did, I think, one plunging attack and then fought him straight up after that. But just, this is one of those areas that they've just gotten better at as far as, like, they're not going to make you fight a boss on a bridge this narrow and tight and fighting the cameras and stuff.
Until Dark Souls 3. Like near the end.
Well, I mean, they did it in Bloodborne. Like even the cleric beast, you're kind of fighting the camera and stuff on that bridge.
Yeah.
But you fight Margit on like a kind of bridge that you can be thrown off.
Yep. Pretty easy.
It feels like a much fairer, like balanced fight and arena. They've just gotten better at that encounter.
Yeah. And I feel like they've worked with like their lock on camera.
Their lock on camera and just like the camera getting stuck on everything else.
Yeah, I was going to say in Dark Souls 1 it was particularly something that I noticed, especially like going back, is that it would like lock on to a random like a body part, like wherever they put it to lock on, it would lock on. I forget where it locks onto like the Taurus demon or whatever, but like it's then swinging its like hands around and whatever, and the camera's just going wild because whatever it is locked onto, like the animations that it is doing are making or like jerking your camera around, which is, like I said, I think that's something that they have gotten better at in more recent years. But you fight him, and then you discover Solaire.
Yeah.
The Praise the Sun man.
The Dark Souls guy.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you know nothing else about Dark Souls, you've likely at least seen that meme of Praise the Sun.
You would recognize Solaire. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you meet your first dragon.
Yes, which almost certainly kills you.
Yeah, unless you know it's coming and know what to do, and this dragon torches this bridge and roasts you.
Yeah, which is always great because, like, if you think about, like, okay, I'm playing this for the first time. So I've just managed to beat my first, like, big real boss that wasn't the tutorial boss.
Yeah.
And so I've got all of these souls. And then I walk out on this bridge, a dragon kills me. And now I have to run all the way back through everything I just fought and live so that I can go pick up those souls. So,
yeah,
you know.
Again, like adding bonfires after beating bosses.
Yep.
Like that was something that's pretty common in Souls games now, but not Dark Souls 1.
Nope, not Dark Souls 1.
So the guide that I'm following then takes you to where you fight the bell gargoyles.
Yeah. So you keep kind of progressing through, like, still pretty much like where, like, kind of Undead Burg Part 2 almost. I think it's like Undead Parish or something, like it's by a church. And so, yeah, you kind of go through that area and fight the gargoyles, which I feel like most people that I have heard from, like, about Dark Souls from usually could probably get through Taurus Demon. But gargoyles is, I think, really where people started hitting that wall of like, man, this is stupid.
Yeah, I want to say that. So this time that I beat Dark Souls, I was playing with a guide.
Yeah.
But even on my like previous playthroughs where I've gotten further, I feel like I've done the butterfly first.
Interesting.
I know I did.
You can technically
this first time. I'm pretty sure it's what, like, I was following Fighting Cowboy's guide, and that's what he said to do. So
yeah, because
once you find the blacksmith in this area, you can run past a tough enemy, and then you're in a new zone.
Yeah, you're in Darkroot Garden.
Yeah, which we'll get to that. But yeah, I feel like I did that first. But yeah, like,
which makes sense because the boss in that zone, even though it's like an optional zone, like, that boss is kind of gimmicky, and so it's not hard. Like, it doesn't really check you like damage wise. It more so checks you of like, can you get what this gimmick is and avoid it?
Yeah, and if you bring the summon in, they do serious damage to that boss, and you just basically have to survive.
Exactly,
and like hit it if it lands.
Yeah.
So but even so, I feel like the gargoyles are only tough because there's two of them.
Yeah, there's two of them, and they have a weird like jump around thing that like whips your camera.
Yeah,
which sucks.
I think I took a clip of the fight with them that I did on this playthrough because I summoned a Solaire.
Yeah,
and we wrecked them. Just destroyed this stupid gargoyles.
Yeah,
because nice.
They are like, up until this point too, like Taurus Demon gargoyles. Like, all of these are enemies that just become regular enemies later on in the game, and so it's kind of like their moveset's not super complicated because eventually, like, they're just gonna be a regular old dude that's trying to kill you. But yeah, so you get bell gargoyles, you get one of them down to like half health, or I forget if it's health based or if it's time based.
I think it's health based. I think you get the first one down to like half health, and then the second one spawns in.
Yeah, and the second one spawns in with half health, I think. Maybe not.
No, I think it's full health.
Is it full health? Okay.
Well,
for some reason I thought it was half health.
I don't know. Check the clip that I post with this.
But yeah, then it hops down and you ring, like, beating them, you ring your first bell.
Yeah, you're supposed to be ringing a bell above and a bell below. That was kind of the guidance you got when you got to Firelink.
Yeah.
And so this is the bell above.
Yeah. And so then you're like, okay, cool. Where do I go now?
Yes. So something I wrote down like when I was playing through the game was that I don't know if I could beat this game without a guide, because
yeah.
knowing what to do next after accomplishing something in Dark Souls is ridiculous.
Yeah. Like you can kind of sort of talk to some of the NPCs and they will give you some sort of cryptic saying where it's like, now you have to, venture down into Blight Town or whatever. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
where? How do I find that?
Yeah.
What do I do?
You can get some hints like that, but for the most part, I feel like this is just a struggle with games, because I remember like some like older Zelda games and things like this too, where it's just like, okay, now what? Where do I go next? And Dark Souls really suffers from that of like, okay, I did this thing, now what? There's nothing pushing you to the next like logical objective, so you're left to kind of be like, well,
guess I'll wander.
Guess I'll go check this direction out. And on one hand, it's like, that's a cool idea, cool concept, but it doesn't quite work out in a satisfying way in Dark Souls.
Yeah, and there are like several times where the game does that too.
Yes.
Because you finish...
There's the one part that we'll get to where it's like, oh, you rang the bells and now this giant door is opening and you can go into this castle that was locked off before.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, I know exactly where I need to go now. I need to go into that giant door that just opened. But they only do that like once or twice.
Exactly. Because as I was going back through this, because I've messed around in the game, but I didn't do a complete playthrough again. And the Duke's Archives, like I was like, how do you know where to go for that? How do you decide to get there? Because I was like, I understand what you're doing up until that point, and then it's like, oh, go back to this zone that you were at like 10 zones ago,
and go take this one turn,
and remember that one door you weren't allowed to walk through. Now you can walk through it.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay,
they do show you at that point, like they show the seals being broken or whatever, but unless you remember, like, oh, that was up those stairs that I didn't. Yeah, it's like, there's nothing there's no guiding hand, which is something that I'm sure is some people claim as like a pro to Dark Souls 1.
And like I said, I have a love-hate relationship with it. Like I
appreciate the idea.
Yeah, like I like that discovery piece of it, but also sometimes it can just be frustrating because it's like where we're at now. Like you beat the bell gargoyles, you ring the bell. Like you've at least seen one other spot that you can go to. Like you can then be like, okay, now let me try going into Darkroot Gardens or whatever.
Yeah.
Even though that's not where you're supposed to go.
No.
It still is like, okay, at least I've seen one other place to try.
Yeah, so the article I'm following then does the what is this zone called?
Do they do Capra Demon?
The lower undead burg.
Yeah. So you get a key somewhere that lets you open, or maybe like you're able to like go back through an old, like a door that was locked or something. There's some, I forget exactly. There's something that was locked that is now unlocked that you can now access now that you've beaten the Bell Gargoyles.
I know that after you beat the Capra Demon, you get the key.
Yeah.
That will let you into Blight Town.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
I think that's what you're thinking of.
Yeah.
Because I think
you can get into Capra Demon after Taurus Demon.
Yeah, if you want, you could do that.
Okay.
So yeah, you go into the lower undead burg, which is kind of one of those classic FromSoft alleyways full of surprise enemies and dogs. Something that they haven't deviated from too much. And this is where I had my first experience with the absolute BS that is invasions in Dark Souls 1.
Yeah. Was it a human invasion or was it?
It was a human invasion.
Okay.
The NPC's not bad. That's fine. So I'm in Lower Undead Burg. I'm down there exploring. I happen to be human, whatever, and somebody invades me.
Yeah. Well, because in this game too, like particularly, if you are human, you have like double your health.
Yeah, you get a big health boost.
Do more damage. Like you do a lot more.
You can see I think it's similar to other games where like that's how you're able to summon NPCs for boss fights. Also, if your humanity is high, the higher it is, the better like discoverability you have for like items and stuff. If you're invading people in 2024 in Dark Souls 1 remastered, I was playing remastered. The reason you're doing that is because you have like a optimized, like picture perfect build, and you're going in just to screw with people.
Yeah, because Dark Souls 2 added some like PvP type zones, and Dark Souls 3 definitely had like rewards for like invading other people. But I'm pretty sure Dark Souls 1, it was just for the lulz. Like, I don't think, like, maybe you got some humanity if you beat them or something, or like I know you
but that's even souls at the time. Like, we're in a post Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne, Elden Ring world.
I'm just saying, like, there was never any real reward for it, even at the time when it was out and people were playing it. And especially in 2024, you're just being a dick.
So what happens? This guy comes in. We're kind of rolling around each other. I get a few hits. He gets a few hits.
Yeah.
He's definitely like better at the game than me. Then he decides, you know what?
Well, he's invading in 2024.
Yeah, he says, you know what? This isn't as fun. This guy's actually like could maybe win.
Yeah.
I'm going to run down the street and try to, and I can't remember. I'm pretty sure that invaders can trigger enemies even in 1. If not, what he was trying to do was bait me to trigger the enemies, and either he did trigger them. That wasn't what ultimately killed me. Was the enemies?
Yeah,
it was him because he got a parry off on me because I was playing a strength build.
Yeah,
and it was just like, wow, there goes my humanity. My souls are sitting there, and that was super frustrating. And every single time I got invaded in this game, and we'll get to a certain like level that was really tedious, but it was like, man, this is just not, it's another area where FromSoft has improved in the fact that like in Elden Ring you only get invaded if you're playing co-op, unless you decide to opt in. And then even then, you know, you can have the thing that summons other people to your world to help you, whatever, because in Dark Souls 1 and even Dark Souls 3, like I found the invasions extremely tedious. Well, I think a lot of it too is that like you have to be using some sort of expendable currency to be in your human form that then gives you benefits, but then you're opening yourself up to this like obnoxious experience that if it goes bad for you, you lose that thing that you were spending to do. Like there's just because
like the number of people who are just playing through the game and are not interested in PvP but would like to have the benefit is high.
Yeah.
But the number of people who are invading, or I guess like the people who are just playing, 90% of them are probably interested in just PvE. Like they're just interested in playing the game. Every single person who is invading other people is only interested in PvP and just wants to be a menace. And so it's like occasionally, sure, I'm sure people run into like, ooh, this is actually like a decently fair fight. Most of the time, it's just like I have my optimized build and I'm just here to gank you, and it's not even really a challenge for me because, you've probably picked up on it. The enemies in the level do not attack
the invader.
Yeah. So they can kind of just run to a place where it's already kind of a hassle to fight and then just try to fight you there. Yeah. And it sucks.
And you can't do anything. You can't quit out of the game. You can't rest at a bonfire. Even in Dark Souls 3, like there was some, and we'll get to that when we do that episode. I don't want to spoil anything there, but I had some interesting invader experiences there as well. But yeah, this one, it was just like, man. And the thing that sucks about Dark Souls and invasions is that you lose quite a bit by not being in your invadable form, but the trade-off is that then you may have to deal with these situations. And there were sometimes playing through Dark Souls and Dark Souls 3 where it's like, oh man, cool, I have 30 minutes before I got to do this thing or before the kid wakes up or whatever. Let me try to see if I can get to the next boss or bonfire or whatever. And what happens? Oh, you're getting invaded by, triple X 42069, whatever, and he joins your world, and it's like, okay, well now I have to deal with this.
Yeah. Like, it's to the point where half the time when I get invaded in Dark Souls 1, I just immediately die.
Just roll off a cliff.
Yeah, because I'm just like, I would rather just do this than deal with the wandering through the level, waiting to be ganked by somebody who has like an optimized build. Like, that's just not fun for me. And if you enjoy the PvP, good for you. But like, it definitely has been improved upon in later games where they have made it way more opt-in-able.
Exactly. And like Elden Ring, you have PvP arenas. Yeah. And if you want to just like try to screw people in their own world, they're going to have a buddy. And they could also summon in a third person.
Yeah, like Elden Ring in my mind is probably peak in like PvP, because at the very least, the PvPer is always going in at a little bit of a disadvantage because they're always going to be at least 2v1.
So anyways, after dealing with that, you end up fighting
Capra Demon,
an infamously terrible boss, the Capra Demon, mostly because, like you said, he becomes an enemy later. So it's not that the boss himself is that bad. It's that he has two dogs with him.
Yeah,
and he's in this tiny little hallway of an arena.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, his arena is the size of your standard...
like air conditioning closet.
Yeah. Like, so, it's miserable to fight him in because you have these dogs. Like, pretty much you have to just kind of cheese it, or you have to, like, be lucky in getting the two dogs down before he really aggroes onto you. Because once he aggroes onto you, it's like not terrible. Like, his moveset is not awful, but it is a tough one just because it's in a closet.
Yeah.
And he gives you the key.
Yeah, and I mentioned Blighttown earlier, but he doesn't give you that key. He gives you
the keys to the depths, huh?
To the depths.
Yeah.
Which is a really just fantastic area full of
joy,
rats and hollows, and it's
slimes,
and all the this is your first experience kind of with the slimes. Overall, kind of your standard just like sewer from soft level, like nothing too remarkable, nothing too super difficult. There's a few janky jumps that you can make, but they're not like necessary.
Yeah. And eventually the depths culminates in the gaping dragon.
The gaping dragon, which is just this spiky vagina with legs.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. It is like this undead.
Why did they name it the gaping dragon?
Yeah. Like, it attacks you with its rib cage, which is like just open and gaping.
Yeah. You can also summon Solaire here, which I did. It helps. This boss is not hard.
No.
It's just it has some attacks that can hit really hard.
Yeah.
And if you can bring
its
in...
hitbox is a little weird.
Yeah, it has weird hitbox. Okay, so this is a good time to bring up a weird mechanic that FromSoft is completely just left in the dust. You can Monster Hunter a bunch of these bosses and chop their tails off for weapons.
Yeah. Can you do that with
the Gaping Dragon?
Gaping Dragon
is one of them where like you can chop his tail off.
Huh.
You can do that with like how you get the Moonlight Greatsword is by chopping the tail off of Seath.
Well, I knew that one. I didn't know Gaping Dragon because I knew gargoyles.
Yeah, same with the gargoyles. Yeah. You can chop the tail off of just like there's like a dragon NPC you can talk to join a covenant. Yeah, like a bonus area. You can just chop his tail off and get something for it. And it's something that they just kind of left behind in their history. They haven't done that in any games really since this one. But it's like, going through the game with Fighting Cowboy's Guide, like he was very intentionally trying to get the weapons from the bosses because he was making a walkthrough. And it's like so many of these bosses that, you can just like chop their tail off. There's the
there's like a dragon on the bridge, the one that we were talking about, that you can like shoot its tail off.
I did that.
And you get
a really good sword for the early game. Yeah. But then there's the half-breed thing that turns invisible. Yep. Like you can chop her tail off, but it's really difficult just because that fight is kind of gimmicky and like you end up killing her before chopping. But yeah, it was a mechanic that they've kind of left in the past, but I thought was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
It'd be kind of cool to see them do some form of that, of like, oh, if you fight this boss and you do it in a certain way, or maybe you use like a certain element or something, like you get rewarded for that, like a additional puzzle to the fight.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. So you fight the gaping dragon.
And then you get the key to Blighttown. Which everybody talks about how terrible Blighttown is. And most of that is probably from the performance at launch, like because the frame rate was so bad.
Yeah, I was going to say, most people who talk about Blighttown being terrible played it on a PlayStation 3 or an Xbox 360 at launch.
Which it's not like, it's still a janky zone with poison and whatnot.
Yeah, it's still not the best, but also it's not 15 frames a second.
No, and like every time I've played through it, like I've felt, and it's probably because I've played Demon's Souls Remake and I've played Bloodborne. I've played other games and I've dealt with the like toxic swamp build-up levels in those games. And Blighttown is just another one of those. And it's something that I figured I would bring up in this episode at some point. I thought I would definitely bring it up in Orlando, but something I noticed playing Dark Souls 1 is just a lot of these levels are small.
Yeah.
Like it shows kind of the time this game was made, and some of the difficulty again comes from just like FU and traps and jank and stuff.
Yeah.
But a lot of these levels, like you can kind of navigate front to back, side to side, and once you kind of get a lay of that area, it's like, oh, there's not much here.
Yeah, like Blighttown, the first time you're going through it, and also there are two ways that you can get into it. And
right.
So if you go in the front, if you go into the way that you unlock,
I think when we played Dark Souls together a little bit, when we were like streaming and stuff, we came in the back way.
Yeah.
And then when I did it this time, I came in the front way. And
yeah, the front way is a lot longer, but it's not super long. Like once you kind of figure out where you're going, it boils down to like climb down like 5 ladders and you're done.
I was gonna say, you come in and you're on like there's like 3 sections of scaffolding you navigate essentially, and then once you get past that, you're like into the next area. Like
exactly.
You can either ride the
like elevator,
the water mill thing up, or you can go over to the boss and like you're there. And there's a big gross swamp you can explore for items, or if you want to farm upgraded materials off the slugs and stuff. But
yeah, and like there's also cursed things here. I don't think this is the first time you found cursed things. Or no, not curse. There's poison, and then there's toxic.
Yeah.
And so there are some toxic things here. One of the few enemies that like don't respawn after you kill them. Poison constantly slowly drains your health, but it's also kind of the thing where most of the time when I'm playing through Blighttown, I just go ahead and just get it over with. I get poisoned and I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna...
You just tank it until you get through it.
I will do stupid stuff and die if I'm trying to avoid poison. Or if I'm already poisoned, then I'm like, okay, I can just ignore it, because you can't get double poisoned. Like once you get poisoned, it's like, okay, now you've got 45 seconds where it's just constantly slowly taking your health down, but not at such a rate where it's like that concerning.
No, but in Dark Souls 1, poison is the most ridiculous it's ever been, and lasts the most ridiculous amount of time. Like some of the things that I did following this walkthrough was to poison enemies, because it just would essentially, if you were patient enough, would just kill them.
Yeah.
Because it lasts forever.
Yeah.
And it's the same for you. So it's like if you get poisoned early on and can't do anything about it, or can't find a bonfire, or run out of Estus or whatever, like it will kill you. But yes, by the time you're in Blighttown, you should have enough health and enough Estus to like be able to tank your way through it.
Yeah, and if you've gone through Darkroot Basin, the cure to poison, like the item that cures poison, drops
you're
from
picking
a lot
a bunch
of the
of
enemies
those
in
up,
that.
yeah.
So like if you've gone through that already, you have a bunch of that kind of in reserve. But Toxic is like Poison's big brother it's drains super fast,
faster,
and you can't just ignore it. So when you get hit with Toxic, it's like, okay, like I'm going to die now. But really, yeah, I guess I had a similar reaction to you with Blighttown, where it was like I had always heard about how terrible it was, and then I played it and I was like, this isn't that bad.
Yeah, there's some definite annoying stuff. There's the like enemies that shoot there's like enemies that shoot the Toxic at you from a distance, but like you said, if you can kill them, they don't come back. So like even if you die, your next run will be a lot smoother because they're not there anymore. So that wasn't too bad.
Like the worst part of it is if you come in the front way, you're on the scaffolding, and it can be sort of easy to just like accidentally fall off of the scaffolding at points.
Right, especially the way you play these games, where you're just a spaz. Because I don't think I ever fell off the scaffolding, but
I utilize, like, especially the more recent playthroughs I've done, I've utilized the roll a lot more.
Yeah.
Which in Blighttown, if you can just have a shield, like that's probably the way to go.
Yes, I was definitely playing strength for this, and it's a lot easier, to just sword and board it and just rock through it. So this leads to
Quelaag,
everybody's favorite girl, the Quelaag. I feel like the Chaos Witch Quelaag. Yeah, so it's
she is spider centaur thing.
Yeah, spider on the bottom and naked lady on the top. So that's fun. She
really wasn't that bad.
She's not a tough fight, other than some of like her like lava-y AoE stuff that can kind of like stun lock you, and it's kind of frustrating. But
the worst part is the run up to her, I felt like, because you have to run through the poison swamp and get poisoned, and then like you get into it and it's like you either have healed from the poison, like you either use a cure for the poison, or you go into her arena poisoned, basically.
Another one of those just kind of like janky game design things that they kind of like leveled out in racing games.
And then like you said, she does have some of the like lava that kind of just flops onto the ground.
And if you hit it, you're kind of just like stuck there taking damage.
And like that's not great, but it's pretty avoidable. But overall, I didn't think she was like too bad of a boss.
No, I beat her on my first try. Pretty much every boss we've talked to at this point, I beat on my first try. I'll let you know when we get to the ones that I did not.
But you beat her, and then after you beat her, you walk through a door and you can ring the second bell.
The lower bell.
Which then, like you said, plays the cutscene where it's like, hey, remember this castle? The door's open now.
Yeah.
Go here.
You can go in here.
And you can also talk to her sister, I guess.
Yeah, so her sister, this is some of the lore stuff that I kind of like got from this guide that I was following, but it's like her sister, if you give her 30 humanity before doing a certain section, well, you have to like go kill a certain enemy and talk to her, give her humanity, and then Solaire will not become corrupted and fight you, and you'll have to kill him later. That was like the one NPC thing I did on this playthrough.
Yeah. It's really the main like NPC quest, like is Solaire, because you kind of meet him pretty early on and you kind of can take him basically all the way to the end of the game. There are technically other NPC, like the Rodrika. Is she?
She's Elden Ring.
You're right. There's like the praying lady that you meet early on,
and then you can like kill her
like
companions in
the Tomb of the Giants. Like that's kind of a quest, and then like you've got the quest with like the pyromancer guy.
Yeah, I didn't do any of his stuff,
but there's not like and then Big Hat Logan, who is a sorcerer with a very big hat.
Yeah, he wasn't there.
Oh,
for me.
Interesting.
He's supposed to be like in that jail cell.
Yeah.
He just He wasn't there.
He just wasn't. I guess there's something else you have to do.
I don't know. Yeah, if I didn't like trigger him being there, but yeah.
And then there's
I got the key and ran all the way down there. And was like, oh, well, that was a waste of time.
Yeah. And then there's Sigmire.
And Onion Knight.
The Onion Knight, who
I botched his quest.
Yeah. Well, because his quest ends with like, hey, he's going to jump down this hole and fight this stuff. And like, you have to jump down there and save him, or he's going to die. And if you die or he dies in that fight, you've messed up the end of his quest.
Yeah. Or if he gets reduced to half health, something else happens.
Yeah.
And then if he makes it through, he's dead and his daughter's like talking over his body.
Yep.
Which I was reading some comments about that, and some people are like, yeah, actually his good ending is to like let him go out in a blaze of glory because that's what he wants, because he's like constantly going through this cycle of like re-hollowing and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dark Souls lore is so convoluted. I'm sure there's a Prepare to Cry about him I need to go watch.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
But the guide I'm following then says to go through and do the Moonlight Butterfly.
Yes.
Which
is a weird place to place, or a weird spot to put Darkroot Gardens.
Before Sen's Fortress?
Well, after Blighttown.
Oh,
because to me it always seems like it's the best path.
You should go there before.
To go before Blighttown, because that's where you get all the cures.
That's what I did, like I said already. And then actually, Cowboy recommended buying the key that lets you go to
the second part,
the area where Sif is, and doing that before Sen's Fortress, because you'll get some levels. The area is not that bad.
Yeah.
Sif's a tougher boss, but not
ridiculous.
Not terrible.
Yeah.
And he's like, once you get through Sen's Fortress, like that's the real Dark Souls begins. And so I ended up doing that before going into Sen's Fortress as well.
Yeah. So yeah, Darkroot Garden and Darkroot Basin are kind of their own optional zone.
Mm-hmm. Not bad. There's like a tree that you have to hit that like reveals a hidden area. Yeah.
That is where you go to fight the Moonlight Butterfly, which is not a hard boss.
No, like, it's just kind of a gimmick fight.
Yeah, and it's a big moth that shoots magic at you, but you can just roll sideways and avoid it all.
Some of those are like enemies in a later zone too, but they're not hostile unless you attack them.
Yeah. And you find a blacksmith? No. You find a ember. You find something past the Moonlight Butterfly, right?
Oh yeah, there's like a dead blacksmith.
Yeah.
From like,
and you can take something that he has back to the other blacksmith.
Yeah.
Who then unlocks like upgrading your weapons with like elements or something.
Yeah, it's one of those like they're ashes in Dark Souls 3. I can't remember what it is in Dark Souls 1.
Yeah. But yeah, so you go through that, and then there's also like a part where you fight this giant Hydra, which is kind of a cool fight. It's not super hard. It's kind of dumb now that I'm thinking about it.
It's not a cool fight. It's so... The problem I have with it is mostly the arena.
Yeah.
Because you can just fall into the water and die. And if you could walk around freely, it wouldn't be too bad. Because it's kind of cool, like baiting the attack and hitting the heads and stuff like that. That part, like thematically, is cool. It's very Hercules. But it's the fact of like finding the sweet spot, wait for the heads to lunge, hit them, but you have to like hit them without falling. And it's like, it's always the like last two heads are just super hard to hit because they're far away from you, or like I had one that was like glitching into the environment, and so like I couldn't get a good hit on it. Yeah, like the idea of the Hydra I like. It's really cool. It's just again kind of the like limitations of the time. And then you can like run behind where the Hydra was and fight a golden like golem thing, and somehow like there's something to do with the DLC.
You free somebody, and then that's how you access the DLC. I didn't really do the DLC of this game because it was complicated to get to.
I got to the point where I could do the DLC and was like, I've had enough of Dark Souls 1. Like, I feel
I've played
fulfilled.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've played through Dark Souls 1 a bunch, and then eventually I picked up Dark Souls Remastered and I never bought the DLC for Dark Souls 1.
Right.
And I got Remastered, which gave me access to the DLC, and I was like, I don't know. At this point, I feel like I missed my time to do the DLC.
I did watch like some of the walkthrough stuff, and like parts of it seemed cool, but I was good. I was good. And part of why I was good is because the next area that you go to is Sen's Fortress.
Yeah.
Which on this playthrough, not gonna lie, I ran through pretty much all of that.
Yeah. I was gonna say this Sen's Fortress sucks the first time you go through it.
Yeah.
And then every subsequent time you go through it and you know how to get through it, you're like, wow, this is really not a very long zone at all. I can kind of just run straight to the 2 bonfires or the bonfire that I need, and then I'm at the boss, and then here I am done.
It's not bad if you don't care about talking to the NPC in the cage and getting the upgrade materials and stuff that are in there and fighting everything for the souls to level up, which on this playthrough I was just like, you know what? I ran to the bonfire and I was like, maybe I'll go back and try to hit a few things that I missed. And I was just like, you know what? I'm good.
Yeah.
So I ran through pretty much all of Sen's Fortress because, it's like... You can run in, kind of run, go up the stairs, take a left, take a right, go out the door, hop down, bonfire, boom. And then all you have to do is like dodge the one giant.
Yep. And
then, you can go get your NPC if you want it, and then fight the easiest boss in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, because it was like Sen's Fortress, you walk into the first room and there's like 2 snake people that come up and try to fight you. And then there are points on the floor that if you step on them, it shoots arrows at you. And then you continue to walk in, and there's a bunch of small, narrow bridges you have to walk across with giant axes swinging back and forth over them.
While snakes are shooting arrows at you.
And then you get to a point where there's just giant boulders rolling down that will just crush you and take 95% of your health if they hit you.
Yeah. Or knock you off to death.
Yeah,
it is literally the FU.
Yeah, there's an elevator
level
that goes up and then up a little bit more just to stab you with some spikes and then comes back down. So you got to get off of it. This is also, I think, where you find your first mimic in Dark Souls 1. I could be wrong on that, but I think this is... So, like, you find a chest and you're like, oh, cool, a chest. And then it bites you.
Which I did finally learn, like, what to look for for those chests. Like, it's the chain.
But yeah, there's a lot of just nonsense.
This is the Dark Souls 1 nonsense. This is the Dark Souls, like, hey, no matter your skill level, no matter what, like, this is designed to screw you over as much as possible.
And there's a lot of parts of this, especially if you're playing it for the first time, that just kind of feel cheap. Because like if you're using a walkthrough, you kind of know it's coming. If you're not using a walkthrough, you're going to die 10, 15 times minimum just from like stupid random bullshit.
Yeah, just trying to like walk through the level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the final boss is
stupid. Yeah.
I think there's a clip of us fighting him from our Twitch days when we were like co-oping through this game, and like he kind of just fell over and we beat the crap out of him.
Yeah, you can just abuse him, and I think he can also just like accidentally run off the edge as well. So yeah, the Iron Golem, again, kind of the like reward for getting through the BS of the level.
Yeah. And then this is like an interesting part too, because after you beat him and you touch like the thing that drops when you kill him, you are picked up and flown to like the city of the gods or whatever, basically. But you are locked out of like, you can't get back. Like you have to, like up until this point, you could always walk back to Firelink Shrine and like level up or, you know, do whatever. You could always access like your blacksmiths and whatever. Like you had access to all of the stuff you had found so far. And then they pick you up and they put you in the city of the gods, and you can't get back like there until you beat this part.
Yeah, it takes you to Orlando, which is a very drastic difference aesthetically from everything you've seen so far. It's like a golden, glowing castle city. And this is the level that I was talking about where it's like, wow, this really isn't that big. Like it looks crazy, and it has the big like spiral staircase and stuff in the middle. And there's definitely some like tough parts, but like end to end.
Yeah, it's not huge.
Not a big zone. And it definitely feels like it shows in Dark Souls 3 when they do the like whole revisit thing. And it's like, oh wow, this is not a big zone. However, this is where the real Dark Souls begins. This is where you will just get nailed off of a tiny little like buttress walkway by an archer shooting great arrows at you. This is where
they start reusing bosses because they start putting gargoyles out.
Yes, the gargoyles show up. There's just knights everywhere.
Yeah.
It's a rough area. It's not too big, thank God. This is where you meet like the giant blacksmith that can sell you. I think he sells slightly better upgrade materials, is kind of like his the reason you would come to him as opposed to the other one.
Well, and I think they had it where the different blacksmiths could upgrade different
like element things.
And so like if you wanted divine, I think you had to like go to him.
That makes sense.
I forget exactly, but because I didn't really delve too deep into any of like the elemental stuff in Dark Souls 1.
But this to me, like this type of aesthetic feels like Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Like the kind of castle-y knights and stuff like that. Like that's what I like from Dark Souls.
Yeah.
So I like this level. This is where the BS of invasions really like reared its ugly head to me.
Huh.
Because you run through the level, you explore, you fight tooth and nail to unlock the shortcuts to get to the boss, and then your boss run is so stupid for this boss if you care about summoning Solaire, because you got to run past at least one Silver Knight, and I thought the Silver Knights had really janky hitboxes for their backstab. Most of the enemies I felt like it was almost janky in your favor to get a backstab. Silver Knight's just kind of wonky.
Yeah.
So you have to get past at least one, more realistically, at least 2 or 3. You get into the main, like, kind of foyer area of the castle where the boss fog gate is. That's where you can summon your NPC to help you with the boss if you want. However, there's at least one archer and there's 2 giant knights.
Yep.
So your options are summon NPC and let him waste some of his health as you fight these enemies.
Yep.
Or clear the room before summoning the NPC so he goes into the boss. Every time I tried to do either option, I got invaded. So ultimately what I did was I just didn't humanity. And I went into the boss, and I ended up soloing Ornstein and Smo, who are probably the hardest boss in the game.
Yeah, they are the at this point in Dark Souls' life, this was the rare like dual boss where you are fighting 2 things at once. Like they did it a little bit.
Dual boss, 2 phases.
Yep.
So they did everything in this boss to make it challenging, because whichever one you kill first, the other will take his ability. Either Ornstein gets really big or Smo takes on lightning.
Yes.
And I have a clip of me finally beating them. When I fought them, I used all my Estus and I popped an Ember for health.
Yep.
And I ended up beating them solo. And I think what I'm going to do when I post this to like TikTok or whatever is I'm going to stitch it and be like, some Dark Souls bosses be like, and it's going to be me barely surviving Ornstein and Smo, and then it's going to be and other Dark Souls bosses be, and it's going to be me like one-shotting Pinwheel.
Yep. Which, to be fair, is like,
Because the Ornstein and Smough is such a
Yeah.
spike in difficulty in the boss itself, in the run to get to it, in the fact that, oh, there's an NPC, but not really, because you can't really summon him effectively.
Yeah, because I was going to say, because Ornstein and Smough are such a hard boss, the PvP trogdolites know that people are going to be human when they are trying to get here. And so that is where they invade. And it's like, in hindsight, I feel like Ornstein and Smough is not that bad now compared to, like, it's definitely one of the worst, I think, in Dark Souls 1.
It is I would say,
Compared
hardest
to-
boss in Dark Souls.
Yeah, compared to some of the other, like, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3 bosses that I have fought.
Yeah.
And then some of the Elden Ring stuff, I'm like,
no, they're
not that bad now.
pound for pound.
At the time, they were impossible.
Pound for pound, boss for boss, no, obviously. They're not Melania. However, when you fight Melania, you're not getting invaded every time you try to run to her door.
Yeah.
You can summon a friend, summon an NPC. I don't know if there's an NPC, but you can summon a friend. You can do whatever you need to do. You're going to respawn right outside her boss gate. Like, there are so many things just surrounding the tough fight that they do better now.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, if you could just start in that, like, foyer or cathedral room or whatever it is, summon Solaire and run in, they wouldn't be nearly as challenging. It's all the stuff around them, and it's the same reason that people hate Bed of Chaos.
Yep.
Because you literally have to run like 3 minutes to get to that boss and then get just like swatted into oblivion. Those are some of the things that they've done better. But yes, there are definitely harder bosses. Like in my replay of 3, fighting the freaking Nameless King, like that was a much tougher experience than Ornstein and Smough. Like once I actually decided I wasn't gonna like humanity up and I was just gonna run to the boss, like I think it took me 3 or 4 attempts for Ornstein and Smough. Like it wasn't an all night affair of beating my head against the fight. It was just everything surrounding it just added such an extra like level of tedium to the experience that I was like, this sucks.
Yeah, because that experience right there is pretty much my entire experience with every boss of Sekiro.
You got invaded a lot trying to get to the Sekiro boss?
No, just the tedium part where it's like, I know what I need to do. It's just such a hassle to like, spend 5 minutes running back to this boss when I died. And I know what I need to do to beat the boss, but it's just a hassle. And so that's very much how some of the bosses in this game are, where it is very much like, the boss run is terrible. There are several ways you can do it. None of them are good.
No. There's like 2 ways to run to Ornstein and Smough. One of them is to like run up the steps, which is kind of how you do the Dark Souls 3 run. And then the other one is to like come through like side room where Solaire is like sitting and hanging out. Yeah, I took notes on my phone as I was playing through this game, and literally I have a bullet point that says, "Invasions effing suck. Trying to use the summon before Ornstein and Smough was such a pain in the ass." Like that specific situation was what kind of made me like, if I wasn't playing this game for Dark Souls month, I don't know if I would have like kept going at this point. I was like, this is just so frustrating and not fun.
Yeah.
Which there are some cool things that I experienced later, and like I'm glad I kept playing, but that moment was just so tedious.
Yeah. But eventually, you won.
And I was rewarded with the amazing chest.
The amazing chest of head of...
chest of head?
Chest of head of... what's her name?
Guinevere?
Guinevere? Yeah.
From King Arthur.
Just a giant...
pair of tits.
Pretty much.
Yeah, no, she's the daughter of Gwyn and the sister of Gwyndolin. And so she gives you the ability to fast travel between certain bonfires, which this is something Dark Souls 1 did. I know we've complained a lot about this game, but this is something Dark Souls 1 did that I think is a really good idea.
Yeah.
Of letting you fast travel to key bonfires. Like certain... because that forces you to still explore it's kind of like how The
Yeah.
Witcher forced you to fast travel from signposts. Like you still had to get to a signpost to fast travel.
Yeah, and then you still had to get from that signpost to where
you were going. And so it's still, you had to like experience the world.
Yeah.
Because Dark Souls 3 feels so much less of an interconnected world, even though there is some pretty cool connectivity to Dark Souls 3, but it's like I can just fast travel from any bonfire. And then Elden Ring, I forgive a little bit more because of the open world nature. There are certain instances where they prevent fast travel, but like if you couldn't, they could have done the Witcher thing where you have to actually get to a site of grace to fast travel rather than being able to do it from the map.
Yeah, there was a part of me playing the other day where I was like, was that how it used to work? Did you used to have to fast travel? And like they've patched it out since then, because for some reason I kept running to the or to the site of grace to fast travel and then couldn't find it in that menu. And I was like, oh, because you just go to it from the map.
Yeah, you just do it from the map. No, it was always like that.
Yeah. But there was a part of me that was like, was it always like this?
It's The Witcher that's like that. But Dark Souls, I think they struck a pretty nice balance of being like, hey, here are like the 10 key bonfires that you can fast travel to. And I think they could have maybe bumped that up to 12 or 15.
Yeah.
Like there were definitely a few that was like, oh wow, so I can fast travel here and then run for 7 minutes to get where I'm going. But I like the idea. I like the concept.
It did keep you in the world better than a lot of their later stuff, where it is just kind of, especially once they started putting like you said, Elden Ring gets a little bit of a pass, but like Elden Ring is also like, you could pretty much just fast travel to exactly where you needed to be. Like there wasn't really like a run to something past a certain point.
Yeah, and I guess the like forgivability is you had to get that side of grace first, which meant you explored it, which is similar for like Dark Souls 3. But there's just something kind of more interesting about like having your key points and then like exploring off from that.
Yeah,
I do.
Well, and I think it did a good job too of showing you how far you would come, because you'd teleport somewhere in Dark Souls 1 and then you'd still have to run a little bit, and then you'd fight enemies that used to maybe give you trouble early on in the game, but you've leveled up and you have more armor and you've gotten better, and you just kill them immediately and you're like, man, I'm pretty cool.
Yeah. Another thing about the bonfires is that you could level up at them.
Yep.
Which is cool. Is something that I was like kind of shocked to remember that like Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3 like force you to go back to the
Dark Souls 3 is
waifu.
a weird one that does that. Like Dark Souls, like Bloodborne is still pretty weird that it does that, but is a little bit more
Bloodborne is
understandable.
also like very much a sequel to Demon Souls.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense that like that's how it was structured.
But yeah, Dark Souls 3 is a weird one to still keep that, because it's like, interesting.
Yeah.
Like you are like 4 games past when this was a thing. So
does your
Guinevere is there. Did you fight Gwendolyn?
I did fight
right there.
No, I didn't fight Gwendolyn right there.
Okay.
I came back because you need an item.
That's right.
So there's like
for some reason I thought it was just you hit the because Guinevere is actually not there. She's just like an illusion that was created to make people think the gods were still around or something.
Right. So you can there's like, because of the spiral staircase in Anor Londo, the way it works, you can like find kind of a second bonfire down below.
Yeah.
And once you get a certain item, you can hit the statue, and then that's where the covenant is for Gwendolyn. Right. And then if you decide to go through the fog and fight him, he's like, "Oh, you foolish mortal!" And then you do another gimmick fight where you fight him on an infinite hallway
for forever, and then hit him once, and then he runs away like a little baby.
Yeah.
And then you run down the hallway again.
I did do that fight, yes.
Okay.
But
not there.
No, and it made, there's parallels to that in 3 that were really, really cool. But
yeah.
So I did do that fight. My website has us going back to the asylum next.
Okay. So, because in this area was the painted world as well. So
yeah, I'm not sure where they cover that here, but we can do that now. I'm pretty sure I did that.
Yeah, I was going to say I did. So the painted world is where Crossbreed Priscilla is.
Yes.
And it's in Anor Londo. So like you're exploring Anor Londo and you're, wandering through. There's this big like cathedral with this massive painting in it. And you wander by it. I forget if you have to have like a doll or not.
Yeah.
And I forget where you pick up the doll. But there's definitely a way that you have the doll before you get here. Because my first time playing through this,
You have to defeat Pinwheel.
okay. So somehow, I guess I had run down and defeated Pinwheel before this. Because my first playthrough, I wandered in here. I'm pretty sure my buddy Chris was guiding me through my first playthrough, and he was just like, there's a really easy boss down here. Like, you just run past all of this stuff, and then you fight Pinwheel, and it was like, yeah, it is a really easy boss.
Yeah.
And so I had the thing, and so I was exploring through in Orlando, and I get this prompt that's like, touch the painting or whatever, and I was like, I mean, I guess. And then you get sucked into a painting.
Classic Dark Souls.
And are stuck there until you finish it.
I did really like it. It made me feel like it reminded me of Canehurst Castle, where like you kind of teleport there, and then you're like in Bloodborne, you can always just teleport back to the Hunter's Dream, but you're in kind of this world separated from the main world, and it was like the snow and just kind of like the vibes of the painted world. I really liked that level, and part of it was just like the contained level of it. Like it felt like from a lot more like modern FromSoft than a lot of the other stuff in Dark Souls 1.
Yeah. And there was a part, and this, I can't remember if this is like true or not, but like it almost feels like that was almost like a proof of concept level or something.
Right.
know?
Yeah. Like they built this one-off thing
where it's like, this is how the game is going to work. And then we're going to build out the rest of it. I know that I'm pretty sure that's not true, but that's kind of what it feels like.
There's a level in Demon Souls that is like part 3. It's where you fight the gargoyle bosses in Demon Souls, and they're awful in that game. But that level also similarly had like the kind of castle-y, spirally staircase kind of vibe. So I think it could have been like hey, let's take some of these ideas from Demon Souls and make this kind of one-off level thing here. Like it could have been where they started with Dark Souls, just design-wise, and then when they finally made the game, they're like, well, this doesn't really fit, so what if we like teleport the player there, kind of thing. I could definitely see that happening, because it feels it feels separate. Like I almost felt like I was playing a DLC level, except that it's not.
Yeah.
Because the Painted World in 3 is a DLC level.
Yeah. Like they really, that was one when I played through the DLC of 3 where I was very much like, we really went back to this well, huh?
Again,
like
another homage.
Yeah. I didn't expect this, because that's like the final DLC too, right?
No, it's the
Second
first one.
It's the first one.
Yeah,
Okay.
Ring City is the...
And so, it is very much like, this apparently mattered a whole lot then.
Also, a really unique idea for the boss, where it's like, you don't have to fight her.
Yeah.
You could just leave and
you get to
exit.
the boss, and she's like,
hey,
here's the door.
You came here by mistake. Yeah, we don't have to do this. Go ahead and head on out. And you can be like, all right, I'm going to head out. Or you can do what every single Souls-like FromSoft player does and fight her, because you need the souls, and
she has a weapon.
Could drop a cool dagger or whatever. So, interesting boss fight. She turns invisible. You have to look for her footprints on the snow.
Yeah, which is a cool concept.
Yeah, and honestly, like, I thought it was balanced pretty well, where like, even if you couldn't see her and she, got one over on you and like hit you, like it wasn't a one shot or anything like that. Like you had the opportunity to recover and hit her back, and when you hit her, she would be visible. So like, I pretty much front to back don't really have any complaints about the Painted World level. Like, I thought it was cool.
Bad. Yeah. And like you said, it's a cool concept. The worst part about it is just that it locks you in there again until you're done.
So there's no fast travel to the Painted World?
I don't think so.
Like, that's not one of the key bonfires?
Not that I'm aware of, but again, in my playthroughs, I've always done it,
before you find her. Yeah.
So,
I was going to say, if you have the like fast travel option, maybe you could, but yeah. The other optional zone that you can kind of go do at this point is going back to the asylum.
which I always try to do before this. Like, I'm always like, oh, I should go back there. And then I'm like, I'm not supposed to be back here
So
yet. This is too hard.
following the guide, I went back there before this, but
Okay.
it was to grab some items and like just do a couple specific things. It was a very much avoid the floor. You don't want to fall through and fight the boss yet. And then, I think, I don't remember exactly when in the walkthrough I did this, but I went back and you fight the stray demon.
Yeah, which is the same thing.
It's the same demon, but tougher. Same moveset though, so like watch out for its butt stomp. I think it can like send out magic or lightning,
I
or
think
like it gets an element this time. But yeah, not too bad.
You do find a very useful ring at this
Exactly.
point, which is basically any water past your ankles, you walk super slow through in Dark Souls. But you can find the ring that allows you to walk not super slow.
So that's why I went back there.
Yeah.
Because
usually I've always picked it up before Blighttown.
Yeah, I ran through and grabbed that ring and then like dipped out.
Yeah.
So that's what it was. I went in there, got that ring because it helps a lot in Blighttown. Even though I was playing a strength build and I was like over encumbered.
Yeah.
If I was wearing it, like I would fat roll, but at least I could run. Like I wasn't slow walking everywhere in the poison goo. So that was nice.
Exactly.
My guide then takes me to Pinwheel.
Well, I was going to say, so at this point too, there's a certain NPC, which if you've talked to him a few times, he kills your maiden at Firelink Shrine.
So the walkthrough I was following,
did they just have you kill him?
I killed him instantly and got the ring that you can't take off because it boosts all your stats.
Yeah.
And
if you take it off, it breaks or whatever.
Yeah. So Cowboy is like, here's what we're going to do. There's a long quest you can do with this guy. He ends up killing your firekeeper. It's a whole big thing.
Yeah, it's a bitch.
I'm going to kick him off the cliff and we're going to use his ring because I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
And it's a great ring. So
yeah, so I did so like after this, you teleport back to Firelink's Shrine, and then the fire isn't there because he's killed your person, your firekeeper, and so then you have to like,
which is like it's a theme that FromSoft has stuck with. Like in Bloodborne, you can bring the like homeless guy back and he kills some of the NPCs and stuff, but it's not at the Hunter's Dream.
Yeah, it doesn't like cut off your main source.
Yeah, it's in the
like,
chapel. It's not like he comes back and kills the doll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it sucked because, it was basically like, oh, well, now I'm going to go deal with this.
Yeah.
Because he leaves you a little note like, haha, I gotcha.
Oh, so he's not still there waiting for you.
No. So he is gone. I think you get like an item or something.
Because you can... Apparently, like, he's a summon throughout the game as well. Like, you can summon him when you fight the vagina demon and some of the others. It was never an option for me because I already killed him, but yeah.
Yeah, so I think it drops like an invasion thing, like a specific invasion thing. And so then you have to like go back to Anor Londo where you got invaded constantly and it'll start vibrating there. And so then you invade his world there and kill him. And pick back up like the firekeeper's heart or soul or whatever it is. And then you can put it back into your firekeeper and revive her. And she also gains the ability to talk after that. So like if you want to complete that quest line, it is kind of like a cool thing, but it's also like a hassle because that kind of like supersedes everything else because not having that bonfire sucks.
Yeah, because I think you can... Well, another cool thing about this game... And it's not really cool initially, but like you get 5 Estus at a typical bonfire. You get 10 if it's kindled.
Yep.
But eventually you get the power to super kindle it and you can get like 20, which is ridiculous. And so like key bonfires like the one at Firelink are super
is the
kindled.
one that you super kindle and you've burned a bunch of resources making good and then it's not good because it doesn't exist anymore. It's like, oh,
I think that's cool about the Firekeeper and stuff, and I may like look up some again like some lore videos and stuff to see that. But I'm glad I made my choice in my playthrough.
Yeah, it's definitely like worth seeing once, but then it's also like every other time I played through the game, I just killed him.
Right?
Is this also the point where the giant snake is there now?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, that's another thing is you get the and I'm pretty sure I have a note about this, but you get the, what are they
Lord
called?
vessel?
The primordial serpent.
Ah,
So there's a primordial serpent
Yeah.
at Firelink, and he's very much like, herpty-derpty-dur, let's do this thing.
he has teeth. It's very uncomfortable.
Yeah, my note was exactly, why do the primordial serpents look so stupid? Because it's like everything in this game looks badass. And then there's these like, it's like if you took my dog, Tina, who is a Chiweenie, and you just made her all neck, and then you gave her human teeth, but only molars.
Yep.
Because they have like floppy ears, and they have kind of this weird like dog cow nose thing, and they have like human molars for all their teeth, and they kind of like bob back and forth on their necks, and they're like spouting all this exposition and lore about how like Gwyn, you know, didn't want to kindle the first flame and blah 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 blah, and you're like, but why do you look like this?
Yeah.
So there's that one.
It is a very jarring experience.
Yeah, there's two of them, and one of them is a lot more out of the way. It's very much like the 2-finger, 3-finger thing from Elden Ring, where it's like, okay, there's the one that seems like your buddy, and seems, you know, this seems like the obvious choice.
Yeah, but is really just interested in upholding its status quo.
But then there's the one deep underground, hidden away, that wants you to help it, like, watch the world burn. And for this playthrough, that was the one I sided with, was the underground one, because why not? But yeah, so they had goofy names too. Like, I feel like the upper one's name is Framped.
Yep, that is right.
Which is just a terrible,
yeah,
terrible name. There is another primordial serpent whose name is Framped. And in the Dark Souls games, everything is thou and they and thus, like old King James. And it's like, it's such a weird slice of this game are these primordial serpents. But yes, they are key to what ending you get.
Yeah. Because there are only two in this game.
Just the two. Yeah. Are there any in 2? There's none in 3. They're not a thing in 3.
Oh, serpents?
The serpents, yeah. Oh, you mean only 2 endings?
Only 2 endings, yeah. I think.
I feel like it's
maybe
like too obvious and like a maybe like bonus secret third or something, but yeah.
Okay.
But basically, it's like Kindle or don't kind of thing. Yeah. So they're there now. And then for me, it was like time to go underground.
Yep.
Which another BS thing, which Elden Ring kind of does this as well, but it's like, hey, guess what? These enemies you're fighting, they don't actually die.
Yeah.
They're going to get back up.
Yeah, there's like a necromancer or something somewhere that you have to kill.
So what it is there's necromancers. I think it's similar to Elden Ring. Like in Elden Ring, you hit their soul and they stay dead. I think in this, you kill them twice, like in Dark Souls 3. If you hit them twice, they stay dead.
Yeah.
Or you use like a holy weapon. So for my walkthrough, Cowboy was like, hey, get you a club or something.
Yeah.
Infuse it with holy or sacred or whatever they call it in Dark Souls, and just like beat the skeletons with that. So that's what I did. But again, it's one of those things of like, nothing tells you to do that.
No. And like maybe it's a lost in translation thing where it's like, since this is a Japanese company, it's like maybe that is a like an obvious thing to like the Japanese market that like we don't understand.
Maybe that's benefit of the doubt, but yeah,
like it is very much just like a.
To be fair, the majority of the enemies you fight in this area are like one shot, like easy peasy.
They're
like
just
it
skeletons.
It doesn't hurt to hit them twice, but yeah. So you go through this zone. This is where Patches is for the first time. He tries to roll you off a bridge.
Yeah, because I was gonna say eventually. Well, I guess you're in the catacombs first, huh?
Yeah, catacombs first. So he tries to roll you off a bridge. You go through, you explore. This is where if you explore enough, you can find a like coffin to lay in, and it will take you to where you can join the covenant with Nito, which is pretty cool. And it's all pretty neato. And that's another cool thing that like has survived even through to Elden Ring with the whole like lay in coffin thing. But then, you fight the dumbest silliest, easiest boss in the game with Pinwheel. Like literally, it was like 2 hits. I'll definitely be posting the clip.
Yeah, it's like he teleports around, but
and he makes
copies of himself. But it's
you can one shot the copies.
Yeah. Well, and it was one of those things where it's like somebody definitely thought that all of those copies were going to be way more challenging, and like theoretically they could be because they can all like cast spells and stuff at you, but like if you just charge them and swing your sword at them, like you're just killing them instantly.
You can also bring in a summon. It's kind of annoying. It's like a drop to a ledge, lose a bunch of health, grab the summon, drop again. But like with the summon, just like kind of also splitting the attention of the boss and copies. Like, yeah, it's super easy to beat, which
it's also where you get the giant dad mask.
Or the mother or the child.
Yeah, but
I think I got mother.
Yeah, the dad is the meme mask where it's like, what is it then or whatever, like the level nothing but endurance and vigor or whatever.
Yeah. And then let's see. There's a blacksmith, and I wanted to specifically point this out because this game doesn't have a lot of VO, right?
No.
But it feels like they took the first take recorded on the blacksmith's like Xbox 360 headset when he is recording his voice lines. It's like, oh, what do you want then? And it's so like crackly and like janky and muffled. It was like, what?
Yeah, it definitely was like, I wonder how much effort they put into localizing a lot. Like, obviously, they put a lot into localizing it, like translating all of the written stuff.
Yeah.
But it was very much like, I wonder what this part is like the voiceover is like in Japanese.
Right.
Like, is it the same quality or is it, because now obviously like they've got way more dialogue and, I don't feel like it is the same thing. But for this one, yeah, there were definitely some where it was like, man, that's a rough take.
So the website I'm following takes us to Seath next.
Interesting. Does it skip Nito? I thought you had to kill Nito before you could even get to Seath.
No, it does Nito like really close to the end.
Interesting.
Because no, you can get to Seath after doing the Duke's Archive. So
yeah, I thought the Duke's Archive you had to beat Nito to get to, because I thought you needed the Lord Vessel or whatever. No, you don't?
No, because Nito was one of the last bosses I fought as well.
Interesting.
Before going into Gwyn. I'm trying to remember.
I always fight him early, but that could just be the way I learned to play the game and have continued to play it.
I'm trying to remember what it is that triggers like unlocking
the Duke's Archives.
What lets you access that. But yeah, so I fought, I want to say like Seath was second to last and Nito was last before I went and fought Gwyn.
Yeah.
But we can
talk about Seath.
Talk about it now because this was one of the other bosses that I had to fight multiple times.
Yeah,
and
Seath
the boss run is
cheap.
Such a pain.
Yeah. Like the Duke's Archives and Crystal Cave already are kind of like annoying in my mind.
The Duke's Archive, I didn't mind too much. It very much felt kind of like the Asylum from Bloodborne, like that kind of, we're moving the staircase, little puzzles, some annoying like pot shot enemies. Wasn't too bad. The Crystal Caves, I don't know what it is with FromSoft and like invisible pathways. This was another area that I just skipped all the like exploring and I just beelined for the boss.
Yeah, like the good news is at this point there are enough messages that it's pretty much like pretty obvious where the invisible path is, but it's also like annoying because it's another one of those things where it's like, oh, so like when people were trying to play this game first, like it was just
trial and error.
Like not a fair thing. It was just kind of like, take a guess where the path is, I guess,
But every time you die to Seath, you start back at the Duke's Archive. You have to run out the side, down into the grass, run across through the little foresty section, run down into the crystal caves, drop onto one invisible pathway, run across, and then run past a room full of the like clam enemies.
Yep.
And then get to the boss. Tedious.
And he has a bunch of just cheap moves.
His moves are annoying because he does the like spiky ground.
Yep.
I want to say death, but that's Elden Ring. It's the like, it's curse.
Yeah.
In Dark Souls. Where it's like, it doesn't matter what your health is at. It doesn't matter how many Estus you have. If like that meter fills up, you're done.
Yep.
So it took me like 3 attempts. Finally, I looked up like what he's weak to. And I used the lightning grease, and that like really increased my damage, and I was able to just kind of beat him down on that attempt. But
yeah, like once you kind of learn him, he's not terrible, but the process of learning him is just annoying because of the run.
Yeah.
And he has some very cheap moves that'll just be like, oh well, I hadn't seen that one before, and it insta killed me.
Stun locked into a corner.
Yeah, because his boss arena is not the most conducive to having a nice fight.
No.
So like it's not the worst, but it sucks.
So then the next one,
he is probably the part of the game that I have done the least because I don't like it.
It's super annoying. Next one mine brings up is Gwendolyn, who we talked about already.
Yep.
And then they go to Ceaseless Discharge.
Interesting. They go to New Londo first here, but so they go because at this point in the game, you have opened up like 5 different pathways.
Wait, there's 4 lords, essentially, and then the game is like, hey, you got to go get these 4 lord souls.
Yeah,
go get them.
One of them is Nito, Gravelord Nito. One is Seath. One is the 4 Kings, and one is Beta Chaos.
Yes.
Okay. So Seath is the one we talked about. You go one way to get to him. Gravelord Nito, you keep going down underneath the earth. Demon Ruins is where you fight Bed of Chaos, which is like basically you go back to somewhere you've been already for all of these. So like Seath, you go back to Anor Londo and you go through an open door that is now in Anor Londo. Ceaseless Discharge, you go into where you after you fought Quelaag, you go back there.
Yep.
And so you keep going down, and there are these new ruins where you fight a bunch of Taurus demons and Capra demons.
Yep.
And then you fight this big lava man. Now, did you fight him legitimately, or did you fight him the cheese way?
I cheesed him.
Yeah. I feel like pretty much everyone ever has. So you can fight him the legitimate way, where he's like a big boss that like slams down very telegraphed attacks that hurt a lot if you actually get hit by them, and slowly like kind of whittle his health down. Or you can aggro him and run away, and he'll chase you and then fall and die.
Yeah, you can you run back to the boss fog and he just like falls off the edge.
Yeah. Something they have never patched, so apparently working as intended, I guess. Because he has an animation for it too. It is an interesting boss, I guess, but it's not like super annoying, especially if you cheese it. I think the most annoying part is that you have to run by a bunch of Taurus demons and Capra demons if you fail it.
No, because they're all those demons down there are like, once they're dead, they're gone.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So it is annoying fighting the other bosses down there, because then you fight the demon fire sage.
Yep.
Which is another demon. It's just on fire.
Yep. The big butt stomp ones.
Yep. So it's not too bad. And then you have to fight the centipede demon.
Yup.
Which is a really tedious fight because
you fight it in like a lava lake.
The room is literally a lava lake. There's like 2 places you can stand. So it's like, get to where you can stand and try to kite the enemy to you. The benefit of that is if you have been doing Solar's quest, he can help you.
Yeah.
So
he can just sit on the shore and throw lightning at it the entire time.
Yeah, or he can at the very least come with you and kind of like draw its attention.
Yeah.
So that one, it's a cool design, but kind of an annoying arena.
Yeah. And this is also the point where, like, if you mess up Solaire's quest, he dies and goes evil and you have to fight him. Or you can, like, convince him to stay good if you have done all of the little things that you have to do in order to get him to stay good. Like you said, giving like 30 humanity to what's her face.
And you have to get like you have to kill a specific enemy, which gives you like a glowing helmet you can take into the...
But you have to like go to that place before Solaire gets there to kill it, or else he will see it and get stuck there and die.
Yes.
Like, it's a weird... Again, I don't know how anyone ever figured any of this out.
So this area, like, I don't think the level's too bad. I didn't mind exploring it. There's a lot of lava BS.
Yeah, like that's the lava parts of any From Software game are always my least favorite, just because it's annoying.
Yeah, it's kind of like the poison.
Yeah,
except for more annoying. Once you get past the lava, I didn't really mind like the exploration of the levels. This is also where you can make or break the Onion Knights quest line.
Yep.
And
it was a cool, like, design-wise, a cool zone, I thought.
Yeah, no, and aesthetically, like, I thought it was pretty cool. It all culminates in probably the most hated boss fight in all of FromSoft history, the Bed of Chaos. Like, I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but it's got to be in top 5, mostly because it's a gimmick fight where your build doesn't matter, your weapon doesn't matter.
Yep.
You have to get into these areas and hit like these heart things, and that will take like a third of the boss's health.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like a big tree with 3 roots, and you have to, and like there are thorns protecting the roots, and you basically have to like hit the 3 root parts.
But after each root goes down, the boss gets more aggressive with its moves, as far as like, oh, now it can swing its arms wider or shoot fire or whatever, and also the floor of the level starts to disappear from out from under view, and it can just like smack you and launch you into the abyss, and then it's over. And the really frustrating part about this boss is that no matter what bonfire you choose to spawn from, you have a ridiculously tedious run back to the fight.
Like, there's not even that many enemies between you and the boss most of the time. At least not that you really have to like fight.
One run, you either go through the lava, which means you have to like equip/unequip the ring you need to not like really burn a lot. The other one, you have to run past one of those I don't remember what they're called, the super demon things that get stronger the more you kill. There's one of those that respawns that's on the path. And so like the route I ran was the lava route, because other than the lava, you just had to run past a bunch of like statues and like one enemy. And the statues can like blow fire at you, but you can run past them pretty quick. But yeah, just really poor design.
Yeah.
In general, like there's not much you can say to excuse the boss run for a boss that's so gimmicky and janky.
Yeah, especially since like if you're going in blind, you're guaranteed to die at least a couple of times as you try to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
Like once you figure out what to do, it's not terrible. But it's also, I don't know, I found it personally kind of like unsatisfying as a boss, just because it was like, okay, like it's one of the 4 lords of the game that you have to like fight, you know. In Elden Ring terms, this is like Godric or Renala or Radon or, you know, like one of the big bosses. And it's like, oh, this is a gimmick tree fight that has some cool lore behind it or whatever, but, you know, it's not super interesting.
Yeah. And then this guide goes to Nito next.
Okay. So going back to where you fought Pinwheel.
Well, they do Sif and then they do Nito.
Oh, okay.
We kind of already talked about Sif a little bit, but
yeah, the saddest fight in the game because it's a big wolf
dog
with a sword.
Yeah, and especially if you play the DLC and you like dig into the lore, it's It's a prepare to cry thing.
Yeah. But so you go from like where the catacombs are, where you fought Pinwheel. You keep going.
And what a zone.
Yeah. It is a pitch black zone, basically.
It's another one of those, like, the game doesn't tell you. So if you just go there, you're faced with pitch black darkness and you're just blindly walking off cliffs and getting like gang banged by giant skeletons.
Yeah. Which is probably why they had you go to the demon ruins first, because you get that helmet that illuminates everything.
So your options are A, you can get a lantern in the catacombs by killing all the necromancers. You're gonna have to hold that in one of your hands, but it will illuminate things.
Yep.
Option B is you can get the helmet that is basically just like a light on your head.
Yeah.
And that's what I had, and it made the zone a lot easier. The zone's still pretty rough, even when you can see.
Yeah, there's a
lot of big, beefy enemies.
Yeah, I was going to say. Even, it's just you can see them when they're killing you.
But you can also only see like 5-10 feet. Like, it's still dark down there. This is where Patches shows up again.
Kicks you off.
He can kick you off. So basically, when you first speak to him, you can tell him you're either A, cleric, or B, not a cleric. If you tell him you're not a cleric, then after he kicks you off and you talk to him again, he's like, oh, my bad, let me sell you stuff. If you tell him you're a cleric, he's after you go talk to him, after he kicks you off, he's still like, you know what, I hate you, we're going to fight.
Yeah.
So
you fought him?
Well, Cowboy screwed up in his walkthrough and told him he was a cleric. And so when he came back up and talked to him, he was like, oh, my bad, guys. I told him I was a cleric. I'll make a note of that in the video or whatever.
But you had already done it.
I had already done it. So I was like, I'm not even going to talk to you. I just killed him before he kicked me off. And then I ran down and I talked to the girl and I killed her like companions and I got the items and stuff. And then... yeah, so then after you explore this really just kind of tedious BS zone.
Yeah, because this is also where they have the wheel skeleton guys, right? They have them here and they have them in the world. They're
in the catacombs heading into Nido.
Okay, heading into Nido.
Yeah, I feel like there's some maybe down here as well. Yeah. But yeah, Gravelord Nido.
You also get invaded on a bridge by an NPC.
Yeah, here. Running like towards, like as you kind of exit the darkness.
Yeah.
There's an NPC invader. Which thankfully the NPC invaders in 1, not super smart.
No.
In 3,
rough.
And Bloodborne. Like I feel like Bloodborne was where they turned it up to be like, we're gonna make these NPC invaders much more realistic to what it would be like being invaded by a player.
Yeah.
Or even if they're not invaders, just like the hunters. That room with the 3 hunters. Oh my god. But it all culminates in a boss fight with Gravelord Nido.
Yeah. Which is a cool fight. He does a lot of like AoE stuff.
He has one really BS move where he like screams and stabs the ground and then you get like fisted from the ground.
Yeah.
He doesn't do it so much if you're up close because it's more of a ranged attack, but he also has mobs that will help him. So it's...
if you're really aggressive and you fight just him,
he's not bad.
It's not that bad.
No.
But if you...
the mobs can get you.
Yeah.
And
like if you let the mobs build up, or if you try to like back up and heal a bunch, like if you don't like stay up on him and find your window to heal, he can start doing some of his...
there is a big skeleton thing like in the back of the arena.
Yeah.
And so if you let Nido come to you, it's not too bad because then you're just dealing with some of the smaller mobs and Nido can hurt them too. So yeah, I one shot or not one, like I beat this on my first attempt, but a cool, like one of the cooler designs I think for the bosses in Dark Souls. The guide then does 4 kings, which I had done before Nido. Nido was my last boss before Gwyn.
Yeah, so this is a zone that's like right under Firelink Shrine. This is a zone that you can get into if you have a key.
Yeah, and I think I didn't do it that early, but I did it. It might have been I think it was my first Lord's Soul, because this, after you beat the 4 kings, is where you meet the other serpent. So I'm pretty sure I did 4 kings, and then I did Bed of Chaos, then I did Seath, then Nido, I think is how I did it.
I think I've always pretty much gone Nido, Four Kings, Seethe, Bed of Chaos.
But I thought, okay, so this is the zone we were referencing earlier where like you can't hurt the enemies unless you either ate a certain item or have like a certain type of weapon.
Yeah.
Outside of that,
Yeah.
there's two things. Outside of the fact that you need certain items or weapons to hurt the enemies, and outside of the fact that there are no bonfires in this zone, I thought that the like layout and aesthetic and stuff were really cool. Like I liked this area thematically. Some of the design stuff around it was annoying. But yeah, I enjoyed exploring the level. It felt very Dark Souls. It was very like decrepit castle kind of, and you did like the puzzle thing where you like lower the water and then it revealed more of the land you could explore. That stuff I really enjoyed. The boss I thought was
another
really
kind of gimmicky one.
Easy except for the like depth perception. It's one of those where like
it teleports you into an empty black room.
Yeah, basically. You don't know where you are in relation. Like you don't know how big the boss is supposed to be. So you're like, I guess I'll run into it until I'm not moving anymore and then swing. Outside of that, pretty easy.
Yeah, because it's bad if you're at a range, but like if you just run up on him, it's not that bad. And there's apparently, like 4 versions of him.
Apparently it's tough if you don't kill one before the next one spawns and then you have like 2 of them on you. But I did not have that problem. I think I was over leveled. So I was knocking them out and then waiting for the next one to show up.
Yeah.
It's same issue I have with the Nameless King, which we'll get to in a few episodes, but like just the arena.
Yeah, is just weird.
Messing with the depth perception and like knowing when you are going to hit and stuff. Like so many whiffs can cost you the fight. This one, cool idea for the time. I think it was probably really cool.
Yeah, like the first time they did it, this being the first time, it's like, okay.
However,
then you keep doing it.
There are some more BS Dark Souls 1 things here.
Yes.
What I wrote for this zone was the hardest part of the Four Kings boss fight is knowing you need a certain item to kill the ghosts. Exploring a level with no bonfire, and knowing you need to be wearing a specific ring, otherwise you will die trying to jump down to the boss.
Oh yeah,
this sums up like, Dark Souls 1.
Yeah, you need to have the like Abyss Warden's
You have to have like
whatever.
Artorias' ring.
Yeah.
To be able to jump down to get to the boss, which is in the Abyss.
Yeah, thematically you fight it in the Abyss, which kills you.
So there's an NPC that like gives you some lore dump and a little bit of dialogue, and there's probably some messages that can help you, but like there's very little that's like, hey, guess what? If you're not wearing this specific ring before going into the specific fight, you're just going to jump off a cliff and die. And then you're going to respawn at Firelink because there are no bonfires down here.
Or you're not because your Firekeeper is still dead.
Yeah. And that is why Dark Souls is so hard. It's not because the boss or the level was so hard to navigate. It's because they do this BS.
Yeah.
And don't explain the systems.
Exactly.
So with all of them out of the way, I think that leads up to the final boss.
Yeah. So you get to, do you use the Lord Vessel to teleport you there? I forget exactly how you get to.
Yeah. So you give all the Lord souls to your worm of choice. And then the door opens and you're able to go to the kiln of the first flame.
Yep.
There are some Black Knights, which for me at this point, I was wearing Havel's armor. I had like a plus 10 weapon, whatever.
Yeah.
I was pretty beefy, wasn't too worried about them.
Yeah, not super hard at this point in the game. I think the hardest part was a couple of them you fight on like sort of a precarious cliff.
It's definitely janky, janky level. Like it's very Farum Azula, but
yeah,
Dark Souls 1 era. So You fight your way through some Black Knights. You get to the final boss. You fight Gwyn, Lord of Cinder, to some melancholy piano.
Yeah.
It's cool thematically. He's not a hard boss. For a beefy strength build.
Well, he's cool, especially to me as a boss, because it's kind of like, hey, everything that you've learned how to do so far in the game, you can do to him. Like, you can parry him.
Yeah.
You can
parrying is his
backstab him,
big weakness.
Like,
yeah.
So, I mean, like, it's very much just like, hey, it's a fair, like, it feels like a fair fight.
Yes.
Like, he does have some crazy moves, but
yeah. And if I wasn't like Mr. Beefy Strength, I'm sure he probably would have killed me. I don't know how to try again, but because I just could tank so many of his hits and I had enough strength to medium roll in Havel's armor, like,
yeah,
it wasn't too hard. I got some satisfying parries. I liked the music. Like, it's a good final boss fight. It felt like a good reward for getting to the end of the game. He wasn't too hard, but he wasn't a pushover like Pinwheel or anything. Like, it wasn't a gimmick fight either. No,
like,
yeah, it was a satisfying fight, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So
I did not really do the DLC.
We
stuff.
didn't. Yeah, neither of us did DLC. I watched some of it. There's some cool stuff. Again, there's some like Dark Souls BS with like how you fight the dragon.
Yeah.
Just stuff like that. But yeah, it was. By the time I beat Gwyn, I was like, you know what? I've had a good time with this game, but I'm ready to move on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that, you ready to move into our verdicts?
Yes.
So how we rate games on the FN Gamers Review scale is with the classic A through F grading scale, except that above A there is S, and S represents a masterpiece. With all that being said, Dylan, where would you put Dark Souls?
I think, for myself personally, I would put Dark Souls at an S.
Wow. An S.
Now, with the context of when I played this game.
An S.
When I played this game, it was the only Dark Souls out.
Dark Souls is just as good as Elden Ring.
I mean, yes.
Okay.
I mean, I think
time and place.
Yeah, well, I think every From Software game is a masterpiece except for Sekiro. And we will later this month be breaking down, like, if we were going to further rate where they fall, how that works out for me. But for me personally, I do think Dark Souls is an S, just because I got to play it when it was the only thing out. I got to play it when there was a lot new to, like, I have a lot of fond memories of, like, me and my buddy Chris just, like, hanging out at the apartment when I was in college, and he was like, dude, check this game out. And he was kind of like Sherpaing me through the early levels and stuff.
First love.
Yeah, like, it was a very cool game. That said, is it my favorite still to this day? No. Objectively, for just the average person, I'd say it's probably like an A or a B. If you like this kind of game, it's probably an A or a B. If you don't like this kind of game, it's probably a C, like, or lower, just because there's a lot of just quality of life things that have happened in recent years that make it much more tolerable. There are a few parts of this game that just kind of get unfair.
Yeah.
That said, like I said, for me, as my first From Software experience, as my first Souls-like experience, and also playing it in 2011,
Right.
on a 360, like I have fond memories of that. And so, I do think it is a masterpiece. I do think we wouldn't have Elden Ring or Bloodborne without Dark Souls.
Right.
And so, like obviously they have innovated further from there. But like at the time, I don't think I had ever played anything like this.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And as somebody who is really into like the exploration part of it, it does scratch that itch very well for me in a way that borders on tedious, especially if you're not into the exploration part as much as I am. There are multiple points in this game. Well, the game never holds your hand, and there are multiple points in the game
where it slaps your hand away.
Where it's just kind of like you did the thing. Now what? Figure it out, dummy. But I kind of like that part of it. So,
so for me, when I was replaying this, when I went back and I finally played through and beat Dark Souls Remastered, I had this feeling of, I had two feelings that like kind of came to the front of my mind.
Yeah.
One was, this is a really cool concept and blueprint that they made here that they have expanded on and made tremendously better with every attempt.
Yeah.
The other feeling that I had as I was playing it, as someone who plays a lot of Souls-likes that aren't FromSoft games, was like, this feels like a really excellent Souls-like.
Yeah.
Like this feels like a top tier attempt at imitating FromSoft. So for me, as someone whose first love was Bloodborne, who then played Sekiro and Dark Souls 3.
Yeah, you have a very weird
2 and Elden Ring. Like I played one first and fell off not knowing what these games were.
Yeah.
And then I played one after playing a bunch of other FromSoft games. I went back to one with you.
Yeah, and we got to like Anor Londo, basically.
Yeah.
I think we fought Ornstein and Smo.
Yeah, we got through like Anor Londo. Going through it again was very... I felt like I was doing my FromSoft fan homework. I was doing my due diligence. There were parts of the game that I really appreciated and thought were really awesome.
Yeah.
And there were parts of the game that were just pure frustration. For me, this game falls like squarely in that like low B, because it's impossible to argue that it's not like genre defining.
Yeah.
Like they did something special here. Like they obviously, FromSoft has refined their formula, but it's still the same formula. They have stuck to their guns with this game, and now they're regarded as like one of the best game studios. And so you can't argue that Dark Souls wasn't super impactful in the industry, and what it did was incredible. However, going and playing it, there are some serious pain points.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like without nostalgia.
Yeah.
This is the type of game that you pick up and play and are like, why is everybody so high on this game? It's like every time Nintendo releases a game.
Well, except that I could see why people are high on it.
Yeah.
Like, I could appreciate it. And there were moments playing it where I was like, this is an incredible game, especially if I could put myself in that headspace of that era. But we've just come so far, and there's just so many, like they themselves have improved on Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Some people don't like 2. I can see it 2 being like, let's say 2 is a lateral move. 3 maybe didn't have the same like amazing world design and stuff, but like everything else, gameplay, quality of life, things like that, like it's just a step up. And then every game that they've made, like Elden Ring, obviously, I feel like after going back and replaying some of these older games, Elden Ring just shines even stronger for me. But yeah. Dark Souls is not a bad game. I had definite points where I was like, this is the worst thing I've ever decided to do with my gaming time.
Yeah.
But I had some points where I was like, this is a really special experience.
Yeah, like I guess I look at it very similar to how I look at, like, I really like the Mass Effect series. Going back and playing Mass Effect 1, I still enjoy because I played Mass Effect 1 first.
Right.
I would not personally recommend anyone start with Mass Effect 1 if they're just getting into the games. And I feel very similarly to that with Dark Souls, where it's like, I personally still enjoy Dark Souls 1. I still think it's a fantastic game. But I also have the rose-tinted glasses with nostalgia. I got to experience this when I was, playing it in college in my college apartment with my buddy.
Yes.
And I know my way around this game. If you were starting a Souls-like now in today's day and age, I would not recommend you start here.
No, yeah. I'm right there with you. I'd
Yeah.
recommend, like, if I was recommending somebody to get in this genre, I would recommend a different game to start with. And if they wanted to play Dark Souls 1, I would recommend they do it with a walkthrough. There's nothing wrong with getting the edge up on some of this, like, archaic game design and being like, hey, knowing that you should probably have this item in your inventory in case you get cursed, like, that is not a bad thing to know going into this experience. Like,
Exactly.
knowing that this jank boss is weak to this element, like, that's not a bad thing to know going into this game. Like, I definitely think it's one of those games that if you enjoy the genre and or if you just, like, appreciate video games, it's worth checking out and appreciating. But if you're interested in Souls games at all, I wouldn't start here.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it depends too on how you approach it. Like, if you're approaching it with nostalgia, you're probably going to have an okay time.
Yeah.
If you're approaching it with, like you kind of did, where it's like, I'm doing my, Souls-like homework because, like, I want to see kind of where this genre really comes from, then I think you're still going to have a pretty good time because, like, you're approaching it from a, like, I want to see kind of the roots of this, versus if you're like, I want to have a fun time, I want to enjoy my, gaming time.
No, don't play this game.
This is not, like, not that you can't have that, but, like, if you're just looking for a fun Souls-like to play and you've maybe never done that before, or you're just wanting to chill out, like, there are a lot more recent ones that have a lot more quality of life stuff.
Yeah.
And that you're probably going to have a lot more fun with.
Exactly.
And, the good news is, since the story is indecipherable, unless you watch 12 hours of YouTube videos, you don't have to play this one before you play 2 or 3.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Like, you can just pick up 3, the most solid of them all, and play 3 and enjoy that experience. And then if you like 3, maybe head back to 1 and 2, or just start at Elden Ring,
Elden Ring is probably at this point, like, the best starting point.
I was going to say, if you really, really want to go back to 1 and 2, I would say maybe start with 3, go back to 1 and 2, and then play Elden Ring, because you will really miss a lot of what Elden Ring does if you have played it before. Like, it's such a massive leap in the things you can do and the quality of life stuff that if you're just trying to play all of From Software's catalog, maybe don't do that one before you do the Souls.
Fair. Cool. Well, that has been Dark Souls 1.
Yes.
We
a quick hour-long episode.
We have a
45 minutes.
Beefy month of content ahead of us here. So, housekeeping-wise, next up on the podcast, we will have Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin. Dylan will be able to speak on the launch version of Dark Souls 2. I personally have never played launch. I only played Scholar, so that'll be a fun episode. We'll be talking about our experience with that game. We may adjust the format a little bit. We'll see based on how this one went. But we will be definitely giving it its due and its deep dive as to people who are pro Dark Souls 2. We both like that game and don't think that it deserves the hate it gets. Along with that and our month of Dark Souls content here, please respond to our post in Discord. I'm going to create a specific channel for it, or on X or Instagram. I'm going to also reach out on there. We're going to be posting a Souls-like, I don't want to say questionnaire. That sounds a little too lengthy. We're going to be posting just some like questions, some prompts, and getting some feedback on the community's experience with this genre of games, like what got them into it, or maybe why don't they want to get into it, things like that. And we're going to discuss the responses that we get on our final episode for Dark Souls month this month. With that, Dylan, what do we have going on YouTube?
In honor of Dark Souls month, I think we've got a video on Sea of Thieves coming out. And then we will also, like, one of our early videos. I don't actually know when that Sea of Thieves video comes out. This could be wrong.
That may have just
it comes out next week.
Yeah, it just came out.
Okay, it just came out.
Yeah, in honor of Dark Souls month, Sea of Thieves video that just came out.
Go watch it. Subscribe.
Pirate Dark Souls.
But one of our early videos that we did was a ranking of the Bloodborne Souls-like genre of From Software games.
Yeah, proper way to phrase that. Bloodborne Souls-like.
And so we did that prior to Elden Ring coming out. We also did that prior to us having played some of the games. I think at that point I had not played Sekiro or Demon's Souls.
And I had not
You had not played Dark Souls. Yet somehow I'm the only one who ever got called out for not having played one of the games.
I got called out, but not nearly as much as you.
But so now that we've played more of them, I've still not played Demon's Souls. I still think it's, spoilers.
Yeah, just save it for the ranking.
If you want to know if my thoughts
you technically have played like the first opening part
hour
of
and a half
Souls.
of it, maybe.
Yeah, at my house.
But yeah, so we're gonna re-rank that officially leading into for Dark Souls month, and also kind of leading into the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC that's going to come out in a couple months.
God, I'm so excited.
Yeah. And we'll also probably, maybe, I don't know, we haven't figured out whether we're including Armored Core or not as part of that. I have not played it, but
I may give it an honorable mention, or at the very least. It's a good game, just doesn't quite fit.
I lost a bet on that. So we're going to be doing that, and then there will be another something coming out in Dark Souls month that I don't know what it is.
I know you had talked about doing like a Dark Souls 2 video, but we'll see what ends up filling that slot.
Yeah, something will end up there in April.
Perfect.
The month I defend my dissertation.
It's about time.
Yep.
Cool. Well, that has been it for our brief, quick top level episode on Dark Souls. Thank you so much for listening, and praise the sun. Dylan did the thing. You can't see it, but he did the thing.
Just imagine it.